It's semi-final time here at the Calling in Indianapolis. My name is Matt DeMarco, a.k.a. Flake. I am here with Brian, and man, I tell you, dude.
That last round, dude.
It has been intense. This is all you, my brother,
No.
because you chose that game.
I got to tell you, I'm standing over on the side watching this game. I thought I was going to have to be physically restrained from just pushing my way into the – like, I wanted to be part of it so bad. It was such a tight game.
I got things to say.
Incredible quarterfinals. I'm so stoked we got to see that match.
And we were actually – I was going to call you in here to just keep Tannen Grace from floating to the ceiling, frankly.
Tannen was literally sprinting around behind. You couldn't see him because we had the focus on the match, but just running back and forth.
All right, we got a top four, man, that I'm telling you is pretty damn sweet. Let's go ahead and show you what's left, frankly, after quite the weekend. There's your top four. Brian, walk us through this.
Yeah, on the left side, you see Pheano Black just absolutely dominant in this tournament, has been clowning Bravos all day, loves that matchup, feels very confident. Taking on David Rude, though, and D. Rude is on a heater right now. We've been following D. Rude throughout the weekend, you know, very, very accomplished card game veteran. But an older one that's kind of had his time in the sun. He did it back in the early 2000s, and now Flesh and Blood has brought him back into the fray and battling for that first calling win.
And Sam Dando on the other side of the bracket there, bringing Briar back into that spotlight, you know, having a time in the sun. Well, apparently, Briar's still hungry for some of that vitamin D, as it were, as Sam Dando has shown just what Briar can do. And like you mentioned, you had told me before this that you spoke to Sam. And what was Sam's, experience going through this these 11 rounds and all the way up to where we are now?
Look, I went to Sam. I said, obviously, you're playing Briar. You anticipate a lot of Prism. You must have beat up on them. How do you feel about having to go against a Bravo potentially to win this tournament? He said his Bravo matchup isn't bad. He's not saying anything preposterous, doesn't think he's a huge favorite or anything, but he's like, I think I play it close to 50-50 as long as the Bravo opponent doesn't really pop off on me like they did the last time we saw Sam in the feature match area. It really got kind of run over by Bravo, but Sam thinks the matchup is close, and if Sam makes it through this and proves that has game against Bravo, I feel like the entire metagame is turned on its head. It just changes absolutely everything.
Oh, it absolutely does, and it takes a tournament to this degree of this talent level to basically put some of this into perspective, where everybody's putting in the work to figure out what is the best matchup for what should be the top dog, the boogeyman, in this case being Bravo. And frankly, prior to this, if Sam has a 50-50 against Bravo, you know, oftentimes it's hard to find that kind of certainty to a degree, that if you're comfortable that it's a 50-50, if you can really push the tempo here. The only other hero that I can feel is like a 50-50 into Starvo is Starvo. So at this rate, if you could bring Briar back from the dead here to show that it's got gas, that's what we want to see. And I know that you and I went through these lists, and we were really just talking about this and saying, okay, well, you can go this way and you can go this way. What's the stance here? Does he try to turtle up a bit and try to withstand and pick his shots? There's really a few key elements to Michael Hamilton's deck that can really punch holes in Sam's strategy.
Yeah, but there's this unique thing going on with Michael Hamilton. Michael Hamilton is a calling champion. Do you know which calling Michael Hamilton won?
It was the U.S. Nationals, whatever that was going on there in Orlando.
Right, and do you remember what was going on around U.S. Nationals time as far as deck selection?
Briar was pretty popular.
Briar was pretty popular. Do you know what Michael played in that tournament that he won?
I'm going to guess a little bit of the old team.
Yeah, played some Guardian, Oldhim. Defensive Guardian, was willing to fatigue out Briar opponents, and now I'm looking at Michael's Bravo list. It doesn't look like anyone else's. It's just not the same as the other Bravo lists in the room. There's more D-Reacts. There's complete giving up on Awakening, not interested in the card whatsoever. And I start thinking, I'm like, we got the Spinal Crush, we have the Crippling Crush, we have the Oakenhold. That's how I would think most Starvos would try and approach this matchup. But when we start thinking about Michael Hamilton, I'm like, is he just going to try and fatigue this Briar? Is that really possible here? It's very different from Chain, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have those soul shackles accelerating you through the process. But if anyone can find that game plan, it's Michael Hamilton. It's the older master.
Now, he has proven himself to be, a master of that, the strategue. So the strategue. The
Let's see if we can
strategue.
get that rolling in the Flesh and Blood community. I like that.
Hashtag strategue.
Yeah.
It's happening, but like you mentioned, like in terms of how this goes, if he does happen to go down that line of thinking, all right, I'm just going to soak a lot of damage as much as possible, throw my cards in front of all of that heat. Well, if I find a spot here, because the difference is that Starvo hitting back with some of these big hits, the on-hit effects are devastating, whereas Sam Dando might just be pure pure heat, pure gas that's coming at your face that you have to really just absorb. And, you know, if the worst thing that Michael Hamilton's going to absorb is just less life total, if that means fusing and coming in with something like Oakenold, buy some of that hand, limit what Briar can do. How about Spinal Crush? Say goodbye to Go Again. These are very important elements that could buy Michael back right into the game. But like you mentioned, without Awakening, he might feel a little less comfortable taking damage. So you might see a little bit of that turtle action.
Yeah, and it's harder to do the catch-up thing, right? It's harder to soak up that damage and come back with your own big swing because you don't have access to it at will. You have to just naturally draw it, and if things don't line up properly, that could be on Briar's Channel Mount Heroic turn, and that's the big game here for Sam. If he sets up those big Channel Mount Heroic turns, just going to be able to pop off.
Well, let's find out what the strategy that Michael's going to take here. Again, it's going to be Sam Dando on Briar taking on Michael Hamilton. Michael Hamilton just played one hell of a marathon again against Chain. So Michael Hamilton just shuffling up, both players ready to go. There's the fist bump saying, all right, good game. Let's see how this goes. But again, Sam Dando isn't interested in long games. Look at that deck list. He's got a dinner date that he wants to catch one way or another here. So Sam Dando on Briar, I believe is the higher seed, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So
Sam, the 2 seed.
Yeah, 2 seed at with Briar at 2 seed. That means that he gets to choose whether he wants to go first or second. Both players having a laugh here. I love to see this. I love it. You know, even when the stakes are so high, the players do take time to just say, "Hey, respect. Let's have some fun."
Like the whole vibe around this tournament is unlike anything I've felt in ages around a TCG. You see in the background there, the people kind of piled up. That's not an illusion. It's standing room only down around this top 8 zone. People are just dying to see these games played. The buzz is still there, and the competitors are all so positive, so supportive of each other. You see nothing but good sportsmanship. Really, everyone's having a blast here at this calling.
Yeah, we don't hit you with those Tupac holograms here. Those are actual, real, tangible people behind there that are interested in this. That is going to be a Enlightened Strike 4/7 again. None of this, you know, I'm just going to set you up and whatever. No, it's I know what I need to do. There's a really big crosshair on Starvo there, and all the damage is going to be directed pure UPS overnight straight to face.
As I mentioned, spend some time with Sam before this round, getting to know him a little bit from the Chicago area. Desperate for a calling out his way, so LSS, if you were listening, why not give Sam that calling he's looking for? I'll come to. Why not?
All right, so Bloodsheath Skeleton is the option here. Usually you see the Findel Spring Tunic, which is the classic combination here. So, but before we even begin talking about that, look at that. Sam just saying, yeah.
That was a confident block.
Don't need them. No problem. That is I believe that's an 8-point Glacial Footsteps that he is just going to laugh at, tossing some cards at it and say, no problem. None of my cards really cost anything, so I could still make a turn out of this.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what Sam comes back with.
So the Bloodsheath Skeleton here is do you believe that there's going to be a situation where he's just going to be trying to stack some Rune Chants and go nuts?
It's hard for this deck to stack Rune Chants like that, but it does benefit from any discount it can get. And on those Channel Mount Heroics turns, if you just get one of your attacks to be cheaper, you're talking a big difference in damage. So it's not doing the huge discount that we see when we see like Viscerai, Leverage Skeletta. Just a small discount, though, is so much more impactful for Briar.
We've seen Rune Blades be very, very benefiting rather from that equipment. And let's be real, it's still 2 block. And when you're coming in with a dominated attack like an Oakenold, having that equipment to be able to just get, reduce the or eliminate the on-hit of damage, that is clutch too. So I think that Sam here is not necessarily thinking about the discount, more so about keeping 2 cards in his hand when it matters most.
No, I think you're exactly right. This is a defensive decision from Sam.
So this game could honestly go 2 ways. Michael Hamilton can decide to just start soaking damage and continue to clap back with the big boys, or he can decide to just start really turtling up, absorbing, taking that same strategy that he took against Chain of not accepting much damage, and if he finds a weak turn or finds a window with an Oakenold or a Crippling Crush or one of those very detrimental crush effects from, let's say, Spinal Crush, he might bite at that. But we're just going to block. It looks like a Lightning Surge blocking a Lightning Surge. That's 2. So 2 is going to go through here. It's going to be 38 all here. This is the semifinals of the Indianapolis calling, and a Briar's in it. You love to see that.
Oh, absolutely. And there's 2 top decks in this format. Nobody's disputing that. But what we've witnessed all weekend long is a bevy of competitive decks. And like I've said, even if the metagame has targets, the players who know their heroes really well, Sam on Briar, we saw a Chain just masterfully piloted throughout the weekend. These players prove there was space for masters of their archetype.
All right, so that is going to be an Autumn's Touch fuse. That's the first fusion of Starvo that we've seen. Michael Hamilton didn't fuse Starvo, I think. I think he maybe fused it once in that chain matchup previously, but it must feel good to slide that hero forward.
Yeah, getting to use that Starvo ability, and this is what tells me, Flake, nothing preposterous coming out of Michael Hamilton. Trying to do a fatigue plan would have been a stretch for sure. I do think he's going to have a very defensive orientation to the deck, but still going to be looking to bring down that life total. Autumn's Touch is the first glimpse of that. We also saw a little bit smaller block on Sam's first attack. Had it been a pure fatigue plan, you just prevent as much damage as possible. But Sam's just going to go ahead and soak this up, coming back for a big turn of his own, possibly.
Oh, this is what I like to see. This is the Briar of old, baby. Yeah, like I said, it's the send me the little Briar, which is I don't care, I ain't blocking. Is there an on-hit? You know, talk to my agent. I don't really care at this point. And it's not a terrible. It's the blue Autumn's Touch, so it's only coming in for 7, bringing Sam down to 31. There's a follow-up of an Ice Hammer here, but the difference here is that in order to get the on-hit with the with the Frostbite, he had to pitch that Pulse.
Yeah, prefer to move to the next turn, maybe with that Pulse in hand, but I also think pressuring with this Frostbite is very important. Sam's going to line up a couple blocks here. Going to use Exude Confidence and Arcanite Skullclap to just soak that up, make sure the Frostbite isn't going to have any influence on the turn.
And Exude Confidence is a great card, of course. It can be pumped up at instant speed if necessary to really just push that tempo ahead and really get a lot more value out of that card. And at this rate, I mean, we've seen what Briar can do with just like 2 or 3 cards. And hey, maybe that's why you took it, right? You take the damage because that unlocks the go-again potential of Scar for a Scar. Scar for a Scar is one of those common cards that are so powerful, a very, very important piece to anyone's collection.
Yeah, just a classic card in Fab. You see it, back in the day with Katsu. It's been a huge part of the Briar strategies. Very, very efficient go-again attack.
There's a Spinal Crush, so that is an important piece in its own right for Michael Hamilton's, onslaught and his counterattack. But he's opting in this case to just block, and there's the follow-up. Why not? Let's go ahead. I believe that's going to be a +2. No go again, nothing floating, but it wasn't on hit for 1. So I believe Michael Hamilton is at 37, if I'm not mistaken, and that 7-point Enlightened Strike is going to be met with an Autumn's Touch on defense.
Yeah, we'll get those life totals squared away down there in the feature match area. Enlightened Strike is going to come through.
Oh, so that Enlightened Strike may have been for 5. I'm curious here. So was there a card draw? It seems like perhaps that Enlightened Strike may have been. We're going to have to get some clarity on that, but it's all good as it is right now. 33 to 31 as it's represented here. And again, just pitch and throw a. That's
a big hammer, Flake.
That's a pumped up hammer.
Yeah.
What's the significance? I mean, obviously the significance is that it's a big attack, but 8 that's just saying that I'm here to game.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to go ahead and make a block here on this Winter's Wail. I think it's going to require probably a piece of equipment or 2 if you really want to avoid that Frostbite on your next turn as Sam. Or maybe Sam has a resource-rich hand, just going to go ahead and soak some more damage. We've seen Briars do it before. We'll see it happen again.
So 8-point Frost Hammer here is nothing to laugh at again. Yeah, it's 8 damage, but Sam has to be worried about that Frostbite because when your deck just doesn't really want to pay for anything, it does cost you a card, and that's kind of naughty in itself. But there is an embodiment of Earth on the board. So keep in mind that does factor in. Now, it's not the old school Briar where if you go off on a tear, you can defend with, a non-attack action that can block 6. That's no longer the case, but it does still factor in. It's still pretty important.
Oh, it is, absolutely. And turning one of those non-attack actions into a larger block is a big deal for the Briar deck, especially when you're facing down an on-hit like Winter's Wail and you just don't want to have your turn slowed down whatsoever. So like I said, I think there's probably some effective blocks that are aided by that embodiment. Should there be a non-attack action in hand, we'll have to see what Sam wants to do here.
All right, as it stands now, it's still just kind of digesting the fact that there is this supercharged, Thor-esque hammer of ice that he needs to look at. And we've seen 2 pulses basically go bye-bye right now. So 8 on the hammer. Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Hamilton. They're kind of laughing a bit over here. When you're so knee-deep in the game, sometimes you don't want to necessarily use some of that attention to go ahead and represent it. But they're doing us a favor here to help us out in terms of just showing you guys out there what exactly is going on. So that pulse supercharging that hammer, but now we've seen 1 pulse pitched early and now 1 pulse played. 1 pulse is now circulating somewhere mysteriously in that deck. The consistency now, Brian, of fusing that Starvo is not quite as as good as it would have been if you maybe held on to held on to a pulse.
Yeah, a lot of times you want to pitch those pulses so they can go ahead and get cycled through the deck again. But look, you have to generate offense too. It's always a dance. Everything in Flesh and Blood is a dance. How much am I putting in now? How much am I saving for later? You have to answer this question. And Sam Dando is going to take the dance in another direction. Just going to get absolutely blasted by this giant hammer, but says, I have a response for you. Don't worry.
Oh, definitely. If you're holding on to those cards there, it's because you know that the clapback is going to be significant. It's an encore right now. Sam Dando, it's his time up at the karaoke bar, and he wants to sing a tune, and it's Sonata. So we're going to pitch, and we're going to flip some cards over here. I believe that that's a red Bramble Spark, so we're going to see 3 cards. That's an attack, non-attack, so we got what we need here.
Yep, going to go ahead and be able to bring a card to hand. Going to take the Ravenous Rabble, get that free go again going on.
And also, 1 Arcane's being sent Michael Hamilton's way. Now, he does have a Tunic and an Arsenal, so the crown could be kind of free here. Play with a 5-card hand. That might be what he's doing. He's also kind of, I guess, evaluating. Maybe if we still do not know if he's running defense reactions in this game. I believe so. You know, it's possible that he might be thinking that if that's a defense reaction, you don't want a Seeds. So maybe you just absorb it, or you pitch with the boots to just take the damage.
Yeah, really interesting question for Michael. Going to have to manage that Arsenal effectively, as all Starvos do. Going with Stalagmite again in this matchup is Michael paying big dividends having that Stalagmite. I mean, look at the matchups Michael has played in this top 8. A Chain and a Briar. The dark horses in this tournament, and Michael trying to take them down. Michael kind of developing a reputation as the Runeblade killer. Went into that Briar calling, absolutely stomped them all with Oldhim, and now trying to do it again with Bravo Star of the Show.
So he's revealing a Revel in Runeblood off of the top over there, which is a red pitch. So you're getting 4 go again. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But he's got to be doing a little bit more squeezy on that life total, unfortunately, as 32 is still a little bit much there for Sam to stare down. He wants to be pushing the tempo a little bit more.
Flake, we talked about Scaletta early in the game. There's the way you can really utilize it as Bravo. You use Revel in Runeblood, get those rune chants out there, and just get a nice big discount for your very important turns.
That's a very good point. Absolutely. Get 4 in there and then crank your Scaletta and go nuts. The defense here is being presented. Again, 4 is a very awkward number to block, so he's going to take a little bit of damage, create another, I believe he's going to create, no, it was the Seeds that got the rest of it.
Crown of Seeds cleaning that up. Here's the big play from Sam. It's time for our first Channel Mount Heroic, and it's going to come with an Embodiment of Lightning as the second non-attack action played this turn.
That's beautiful. That Channel Mount Heroic, there's already an Earth card, I believe, in the pitch zone, so no,
correct.
Yeah, if Earthlore Surge is going to satisfy that Channel Mount Heroic, and what's beautiful about this is that you just got to satisfy it the first time, and then you'll get it for 2 turns because you'll eventually be able to attack next turn as well. So unless Michael Hamilton has something very disruptive like a Spinal Crush and Okanold, etc., Sam might be able to pop off again.
Yeah, and Sam just going to let that Channel Mount Heroic be the end of the turn. Going to go ahead and pay the cost for it and do a little Arsenal, and Revel in Runeblood going to be the draw. This could be an explosive turn for Sam. Has the Embodiment of Lightning set up, has the Channel Mount Heroic set up. What can Michael Hamilton come back with? This is the perfect time for some of that Starvo disruption. Something like a Crippling Crush, Spinal Crush. That could be huge here, but it looks like it's just going to be Autumn's Touch instead.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, this is exactly where you want to be pushing that Starvo forward and saying, I've got it, baby. I've got that Okanold, that double fuse. This is going to be nasty.
Do you see Sam's hand? He's got, I believe he's got the Force of Nature. And Channel Mount Heroic plus Force of Nature, that's the super combo right there. If he can go off with that and just draw cards, come off with all these attack actions, things can get out of control very quickly for Michael Hamilton.
Yeah, Force of Nature is basically saying your attacks that have the value that's larger than the base will create a draw card effect on hit, and that's like turning all your cards into snatch more or less, which is super powerful. And I like what Sam did here by leaving, not necessarily busting open that Embodiment of Lightning.
Oh,
just
absolutely.
Saving it for next turn. There's significant implications with that.
I think so, and not only that, seeing this Force of Nature, there's a really good chance that Sam can actually go ahead and make a second Embodiment of Lightning when it comes to his turn And that's when this game can just get out of control. If they can just be attack action after attack action after attack action, pumped up by this Channel Mount Heroic, drawing a card each time from the Force of Nature, you could see that 32 turn into a small number real quick for Michael Hamilton.
Sam Dando just laughing the damage away, no problem. I still got 2 digits of health. That's more than enough because the Channel Mount Heroics is online. It's on the board. You've got an embodiment of lightning, and like you mentioned, what we saw there. Ready to go is a Revelant Runeblood, and that could potentially fuel something with that Skeletor.
Yeah, and Force of Nature in the arsenal already. So I think there's 2 copies of Force of Nature. Going to use Coax of Commotion to go ahead. It's going to be nice and buffed up from that Force of Nature from the Channel Mount Heroic. Looking to force in a little damage is Sam Dando.
Yeah, 8 damage coming in with the go again. And what's cool about Coax of Commotion is that you get multiple options of what you want to do, but everyone benefits.
Yeah. Kind of. One of the reasons you play a symmetrical card like this is you think you can benefit a lot more. So if this Coax of Commotion draws an additional card, given the setup that's out there right now for Sam and the fact that Channel Mount Heroic is going to amp things up so drastically, it could get out of control real quick. But here's what I want to note. We see a Weave Earth in Sam's hand. I believe one of those 2 cards we don't know is a second copy of Force of Nature. So is that 3rd card an attack? Is this Coax Commotion going to hit and bring more gas to Sam's hand? Has to be able to find more attacks to really get maximum benefit on this turn.
Yeah, this is an attack definitely that Michael Hamilton is going to have to, I feel like this is what you block out here because the on-hit potentially is 2 cards, and that is so much fuel for this turn to just go haywire.
Yeah, and also time for Stalagmite as well. And I agree with Michael Hamilton. You can't let this turn go unabated. And big response as well. Staunch response coming in for a big block. First of those big defensive reactions we're going to see here.
9 block over the top here, so that's more than enough to satisfy. But what's important here as well is that Frostbite is basically buying a card out of the hand. There is the Revelant Runeblood. That's going to go ahead, drop 4 Rune Chants on the board. And what's important with this to note is that Revelant Runeblood kind of gives a little bit of an expiry date on those Rune Chants.
Yep, those Rune Chants only going to be around for this turn, so Sam's going to go ahead and have to leverage those. Are going to see another embodiment of lightning. Here come the Rune Chants. What is this last card? Is it the Force of Nature like I thought, or did I lose track of a Force of Nature at some point? See that Rosetta Thorn coming in now.
Rosetta Thorn, there's more than enough, non-attacks that have been played here, so it's going to be 2 and 2 and 4, a little 4 times 1 on top of that. So he's just reading the cards here, making sure that everything's even, Steven, and make sure that everything's okay. So I think the question here is, does the Rosetta activate or basically, trigger the embodiment of lightning? Is he losing the go again off of that token here? Because there it says, so when you say play an attack action card, so no, you get to keep it for next turn. That's a little spice that you get to inherit on your next go around.
You know what, Flake, it is. That's not what Sam wanted from that turn, though. Sam wanted to go off. That was supposed to be Sam's chance to really seize control of this game, and all the pieces were there, just didn't find the attacks needed, and it was because of Michael Hamilton sniffing out that Coax of Commotion, knowing that was the key block point. You couldn't afford to let that on hit go, and I promise you that's not the way Sam drew that turn up. Has to be disappointed with how that went.
Absolutely not, and I think Michael Hamilton also sliding the Stalagmite there just also cost Sam a little bit of grief there, and as it stands now, I mean, back to the game plan against Chain, which is block out these big devastating turns and come at you with an Ice Hammer. And when you are Briar, you do not want to pay for anything. But the good news here is that there are still equipment. So if Sam loves his hand here, he could block if necessary with just the Skeletor and just the Grasp. But I don't think he likes the hand that much because he's just going ahead and tossing. I think that's a Sting of Sorcery and a Nimblism, and those are 2 pretty decent cards to toss away.
They are, but here's what you're seeing from Sam right now. You have to play to those big turns. That's how you win this. So if you're not producing a big turn, block out. Don't worry that your turn's not going to be all that explosive. Go ahead and just make a Rune Chant with your Grasp of the Arcanite. Turtle up, save that embodiment of lightning for a key point, and find the Channel Mount Heroic you need to amp up your entire deck. You'll also have the Force of Nature sitting there, I believe, in Arsenal ready to go. And if you combine those cards, again, you can kill an opponent out of nowhere. You can absolutely go off just on the last turn. The attack actions didn't quite line up for Sam Dando.
And it's the RKO of game plans, just out of nowhere, and you get him there. And in this case, the fact that this embodiment of lightning is going to have it's going to have a shelf life of 3 days, apparently, or 3 turns. That is the longest I've seen an embodiment of lightning Lightning survive in an aggressive Briar list, but you got to do what you got to do. So that's a nice little piece that you have on the board here. So the next attack, you do have Go Again, and if you're Sam here, what card are you hoping to connect with on that embodiment of Lightning?
Anything that is pumped up by Force of Nature and Channel Mount Heroic. That all the attacks are basically replacement level. You don't really care which one is ultimately going to come through. You just want it to produce more attacks. You want it to bring more cards to your hand, and you have to chain things together. And unfortunately, has not happened yet for Sam. At least, though, there is some bright side. This is a big Autumn's Touch. No disruption on Autumn's Touch, though. And if this is what you get on the Starvo turns, you can fade that. You can go ahead and take some damage, or you can do a little blocking if you want to. You're not necessarily completely blown out of the water. If this was something like a Spinal Crush that lined up with Sam's Channel Mount Heroic turn, that could be game-breaking. But in Autumn's Touch, you can bear that. You can take the damage.
Yeah, I think that Sam here is still okay. I think that if he does decide to just tank a lot of this damage, and maintain some of the equipment, hoping for a better hand, he might be holding something pretty fiery if necessary. He's still evaluating, but again, 8 Dominate is half of his life total, and that is something that he has to keep in mind here as he's running out of runway in terms of actually getting this off the ground and actually getting somewhere. As Michael at 27 has really been in the driver's seat. That big turn that you mentioned, that that Coax a Commotion, Force of Nature, Channel Mount Heroic turn fell pretty flat.
No, it absolutely did. It was one attack action away from really being explosive, and it just wasn't there for Sam. And Michael smartly sniffed it out, didn't give him a chance to find it when digging with that Coax Commotion.
So still looking over here, we're going to follow that up. This is the way that Starvo typically does, which is, hey, we're going to throw that Ice Hammer at you. The second instance of the Skull Cap has been used, so no more block from the headpiece, but you still got 4 block coming in when necessary with the gloves and the Skeleton. So still lots of, opportunity to soak, lots of, help off the Dominates if necessary. And Sam Dando is still sitting on that embodiment of Lightning.
Yeah, wants to really turn that into something special and not just a little bit of Go Again, because it's just too easy for Michael Hamilton to block out, quite frankly. This helps. Nimblism into Swarming Gloomveil.
Yeah, it's a Go Again off of that as well, so that's all right. You didn't really create any auras prior to this, so Nimblism with the Swarming Gloomveil and Go Again. That's 6 attack and Go Again. That's the start of a turn if necessary. I just don't think he's got any cards left.
No, I don't think there's any follow-up here. I still am of the belief we're looking at a Force of Nature that's sitting in the arsenal begging for a Channel Mount Heroic to get paired up with. If that happens, look, forget these life totals, honestly. All they're telling you is how much time Sam has. When it reaches 0, time's up. But as long as Sam has time, might find that explosive turn that could propel him to victory over Michael Hamilton.
A little bit of cycling over here. He's going to be pitching a ice card using the Crown of Seeds. Cycle that arsenal card to the bottom of your deck. Draw off the top. Prevent 1 point of damage here, which is fine. No problem. I mean, the damage that he's absorbing is not necessarily the whole story here. What he wants to do more than anything is just cycle some of the cards that he doesn't want to see. Continue the pressure, but finding an opportunity to also play a staunch response to absorb that. That's not bad as well. You're keeping that healthy 27 to 11 life total. And then, you mentioned that it's not necessarily about life total. Life total is kind of like the clock. It's the longevity of the game that you're looking at. But eventually, Sam's going to have to be aware that a dominated attack is going to end the game.
Yeah, and look at this really heavy resource expenditure to make sure that Winter's Wail is able to come through, keep the pressure up. Going to pitch 2 reds and the Tunic to go ahead and get an attack on this turn.
Looks like Michael had a really, really tough hand to digest here, so this is just one of those turns where you make the best out of it.
Yeah, resource light, to be sure.
You just gotta grow a rose out of a pile of crap sometimes, and this is his best opportunity to do so. You do your best here, and that's all you can do. But Sam, unfortunately, is he's staring down another 4 damage, and that's just a little bit closer to the edge that he might not feel comfortable with. He's evaluating what his cards are like. The pressure's on, and he kind of shakes his head and say, all right, I like my chances. If that's not an ice, there's no ice chaser on that.
That was a warm 4, as Tannen likes to say, and that means no disruption, and maybe this is the spot for Sam. Did Sam find the Channel Mount Heroic needed to really go off with a potential Force of Nature? It's going to start with Tome of Harvest, I believe.
Yeah,
pitching the Force of Nature. There's going to be a big hand.
That's what you got to do. I mean, you got to get some resources going here, and it's not just about pitch, it's about actual presence on the board. So there's the first little feeler if necessary. He's just kind of evaluating what he's got. He's got a lot of cards at his disposal. There's a Bramble Spark with the Fuse. That's a great start.
Yep, going to be able to get wide with that Bramble Spark. Has a little go again in the form of embodiment of lightning. So I wouldn't expect this to be the massive game-breaking turn, but could get some solid damage output here, could Sam Dando.
So the next attack that's going to occur, because the Bramble Spark was fused, it's going to get +3 to the next attack, but more so than that, 1 Arcane's coming through, and that is also a Swarming Gloom Veil that is going to get go again, but it got the go again off of the creation of the lightning anyways, but still, it's 6 damage, and it's coming with 1 Arcane piece.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sam kind of doubling up on go again a couple times here, so not able to get as wide as theoretically possible. But still, good damage output on this card. Has cards left in hand. I expect more to be coming on this turn. Big block, though, from Michael Hamilton. It's staunch response once more.
Yeah, so the strategy is becoming a lot more clear here for Michael Hamilton, which is just, really pump the brakes on that go wide strategy, that go tall strategy, but there is a lightning press, and I believe he's running 2 red lightning presses, so that's 1 now used, which is going to put him over the top here just to, squeak in with a little damage.
Yeah, push a little bit more damage through, get an embodiment of Earth, that's fine, and, making the most out of the hand, and I think really trying to get to a specific set of cards. That's what Sam is all about here. Going to go ahead, use the vast majority of his hand. Going to make a Rune Chant, follow it up with Rosetta Thorn. Plenty of arcane damage headed Michael Hamilton's way.
Well, and at the end of the day here, that was a lot of cards that were played, and he's only squeaked through 2. Now, the Rosetta as a 2/2-1 is an awkward amount of damage, but ultimately, Michael Hamilton still has 2 cards in hand here, so he could honestly block with 1, keep an ice card, and pitch for hammer and still feel pretty good about things.
Yeah, and that's what he chose to do here. So I expect there's going to be a decent return fire from Michael Hamilton here. And with Sam at 7 life, I said the life totals don't matter until they matter. we're getting there.
Oh, no. There it is, just an Okanold the old-fashioned way. 7 damage it's exact lethal in this case.
Yeah, it's still super efficient output. 3 for 7, you're very happy with in most scenarios. Obviously, it's not the absurd Okanolds we've seen throughout the day, but Michael's going to be happy with a low resource investment that presents lethal.
So this is something that Sam Dando is going to have to answer. Keep in mind there, Skeletor and the Grasp of the Arknight have been untouched. Those equipment pieces are very critical to the defensive strategy that Sam needs to put up, because you do not want to, if you're going wide the way that Briar likes to go wide, you do not want to have to block with cards in hand. So those are some fail safes if necessary.
Is going to move some equipment in front for the block here, along with a Revel in Runebloods for a full 7 block.
Yep, and keep in mind there's an embodiment of Earth there that is going to add a little bit of extra, steadfastness to the Revelin Runeblood, which gets a little bonus on the defensive numbers on that card.
Yeah, clean block from Sam. That tells me the hand not quite there yet, but I think there'll be a little fire here from Sam. Preserve some cards. I don't think this is the big turn, but, it only takes setting up that Channel Mount Heroic to really turn the corner. You head into your next turn with that, and you just blow your opponent up sometimes.
Yeah, it's been mostly sizzle, no steak from Sam, unfortunately. He's presented...
So far.
Yeah, I know, and he's really made he's tried, he's presented some very aggressive turns, but Michael has been very, very, heels dug into the ground, just putting up the defenses and clapping back when necessary. Now, here's a big turn.
Yeah, Sonata Arconyx going to be the follow-up. That's going to go ahead and create that embodiment of lightning, which Sam wants to have out there on the field. We did it. We paired up. Going to go ahead and get that Scar for a Scar in hand. Is Sam? Now, push a little bit of arcane damage.
Yeah, 1 damage going through, and that Scar for a Scar is going to have natural go again. So if Sam is... Sam ideally here will play something that doesn't have go again, take advantage of the lightning, and then you could follow that up with a Scar for a Scar. There is some reach here.
Yeah, Sam is moving through the deck very efficiently as well. Almost always using 4 cards, drawing with these Tome of Harvest, just moving along, getting deeper and deeper, finding that combination of cards he needs to win this game. And I think that's the right way to think about Sam's deck. It's a combo deck. You're trying to put together some very specific pieces. Sure, you're having smaller turns. You're doing a little bit here, a little bit there. But if you ever get that Force of Nature Channel Mount Heroic combo, you'll see fireworks.
All right, so there's the Frostbite, the last bastion of hope from the Bastion of Eyes of Lost has been pushed forward. There's another go again that is going to be paid for. It has to be paid for, so pitching a Ravenous Rabble to push another 4 damage, 4 go again, but that Snatch did get stuffed, and cards that draw cards are so critical to Briar's strategy.
Yeah, that's when you've seen Michael Hamilton's ears perk up a little bit, right? Anytime that you see the words draw a card attached to something, Michael starts reaching for the big blocks.
Yeah, those control decks are like, it's like anything that says draw card is like a dog whistle. They just kind of, like you mentioned, it's just like, oh, what? Okay, paying attention now. So that was the perfect block, and it did cost another resource to go ahead and continue. And that Ravenous Rabble was another potential 5 go again, if 4 go again if necessary. So, but this one gets stuffed too. There's a sink below.
Yeah, D-reacts at the right time, lining them up very nicely in terms of getting the big ones on the big attacks, the smaller D-reacts on the smaller attacks. That's what you really want to see. That shield, though, important resource now used up, and that's going to be everything's a go for Sam at this point. He knows if he's able to set up that turn, does not have to worry about Frostbites out of nowhere anymore. That's a big deal for Sam.
Yeah, if you endure the winter long enough, eventually spring comes around, and that ice shield is now thawed out completely. So he doesn't have to worry about, paying that extra tax. So Sam's got a full grip here, got a card in arsenal. This game is still not over, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
because
not even close.
There's still 2 Channel Mount Heroics floating around.
Yep, and that'll be the big haymaker from Sam. See a Blizzard pitched here. That big tool for Michael Hamilton. Again, points of differentiation for Michael Hamilton from the standard Starvo list. You usually see a stockpile of Blizzards, 3 copies in many instances. Hamilton only running 1. So it would be strong in this matchup on those combo turns. And Sam's got to know this as well because the players are presented with deck lists ahead of time. So there's a lot of barriers to Sam's combo turns, which have slowly been taken down as this game has gone on. There's that Bastion of Eisenloft no longer on the field. There's this Blizzard you don't have to worry about anymore. And as you mentally check off all of these things, Sam's like, all I have to do is survive and get to this point, and I'm going to be able to produce that massive turn.
Yeah, you have to basically keep knocking on the door until it eventually creaks open a little bit, which Sam has done here. But again, the fact that this Winter's Whale coming in at that breakpoint of 4 with the tax of the extra ice card, the Frostbite, that is something that Sam doesn't want to have to deal with. Yeah. So here's a Gorganian Tome, and we're going to go rip a card off the top, and that's a nice little piece here, the first sort of domino to fall in terms of getting to that Rosetta Thorn, perhaps creating another embodiment of lightning to get a go again, but he already donated 2 cards to Michael Hamilton's Hammer Swing, so what else does he have?
Looks like going to go ahead and pitch, make a Rune Chant, and just come in with that Thorn. That's enough for Sam. And like I said, I get what's going on here. If Sam doesn't have the key pieces, you keep pitching. Although, if you look at what's there, that's the Channel Mount Heroic, and I believe that's the Force of Nature that are now pitched. So Sam just saying, I'll get him on the next cycle. Wait for this to line up a little better.
That is some confidence right there. I'll see you again later. No problem.
Look, one of these cards was unknown information prior to the Gorganian Tome. So that changes things, right? If you knew these 2 cards are in hand, maybe you do a little bit more setup. You try and get to that specific combo turn. If you're just not there for it because you've already invested some resources, then you're not there for it, and you have to wait for the next pass.
I do have to say that despite the fact that Michael has been playing a very defensive game here, Sam has been able to do more than half of the, he's basically done more than half the journey here.
Yeah.
And that needs to be at least noted here because Sam Dando may feel like he's a little bit punchless, but he has put in some work. But Channel Mount Heroic is a very detrimental card to Sam's strategy.
Yeah, it's Channel Lake Frigid over on Michael Hamilton's side. We have all the channels on our brain right now, but you're exactly right. This is a card that could really slow down any potential aggression from Sam, especially when you pair it up with a second copy that's going to go ahead and activate that Winter's Whale.
What's hilarious, because yesterday's geography mix-up, when I said geography, I should have known because I said geography, because they're forget it.
You were going to be tested on it the rest of the weekend. You knew it.
Pen up in the air. Never mind. But yeah, Channel Lake Frigid is just taxing every single move. And for a deck that goes wide, it gets expensive. And Sam, again, doesn't want to pay for anything, frankly. He just wants to go ahead and chuck cards out there. Looking at this list, the amount of cards that are just played for free. Scar for a Scar. Snatch. All the Entwined Lightnings and Lightened Strikes and Swarming Gloom Veils. Those come out for free, baby. And Channel Lake Frigid is just there to slam a little price tag on every single move that Sam wants to make.
Yeah, you have to think once you see the Channel Lake Frigid, you sort of just are incentivized to do a little bit more blocking because it's going to be tough to put together a big turn. But There's got to be some fear creeping in on Sam's side. What happens if that Starvo, that huge Starvo turn, just comes out of nowhere? If there is a fused attack that you can't answer, if there's a Glacial Footsteps with Dominate that is just really hard to get stuff in front of, because the equipment's used up at this point. And that means that Dominate is going to be very effective. There's no D-Reacts in this Briar deck to go ahead and save you. So as soon as something gets Dominate, there's got to be alarm bells going off for Sam. And that means the clock is ticking at that precarious 7 life.
Yeah, that 7 life, right now you feel healthy, but it's when you get to 3, 4, or below that those dominates, like you mentioned, become very dangerous. So I think he's just very, aware of this nastiness. So 2 blocks here. It's going to be a Lightning Surge red and a Tome of Harvest. Going to block out the whole hammer swing here. And again, when you're not paying for anything, 2 cards in hand could potentially be 2 full moves.
You're exactly right.
But Channel Lake Frigid.
The follow-up here for Sam. It is going to be an investment in that Channel Mount Heroic. We have the Earth card to put on the bottom, and that means Sam's really putting a lot of eggs blind into the next basket. We're going to come across that 4-card hand. Sam needs it to be a big one. Needs a lot of things to go right here, but he thinks the clock is ticking. He doesn't want that Channel Lake Frigid to stick around. Doesn't want any kind of disruption for Michael Hamilton as we head into this turn. I think it's sort of a desperation Channel Mount Heroic, but it's one that I agree with because of this fear that's setting in.
Yeah, when your back's against the wall, you have to identify what your lines to victory are and play to them. If this is the way that you potentially going to win the game by having this on the board and maybe Michael Hamilton doesn't have a big turn, then you need to set up for that. There's no reason to play it safe or whatnot if it's not going to get you there. As you can see right here, it's just a Lightning Surge.
Yeah, that's it from Michael Hamilton. And look, there could be follow-up. This deck can get tricksy sometimes, but Lightning Surge going to go unblocked by Sam. Not worried about it. Tunic going to go ahead and tick up. Now, that was Lightning Surge from Arsenal, so that had go again, and that's why this is potentially an explosive turn. That Spinal Crush ready to do a little bit of disruption. Once it crosses that 4-point break point, all the go again going to be out of Sam Dando's system.
So that hand for Michael Hamilton was a D-React and 2 pretty big attacks. I believe that was a blue, if I'm not mistaken, disable, I think that
you are correct.
Tossed away there. So none of the elements. He didn't have the Starvo. So Sam Dando's risk here looked like it was relatively punchless as he went back down to 5, and there was no real follow-up until kaboom. Basically, the finishing move from the Attitude Era comes through, and that is a nasty one because Go Again is such a valuable asset that Sam Dando leans on with this Briar list.
Yeah, I'm going to be frank with you. This may be the knockout punch. This basically demands 2 cards from Sam's hand to block because there's only 2 block value left over on Sam's side. So if you want to retain Go Again, that means you have to block this attack down below 4. If you take that 4 damage, you're not going to get Go Again. 1 card isn't going to get you that threshold with no embodiments of Earth out there, so you're just committed at this point. It's 2 cards or nothing.
Yeah, Michael Hamilton is just saying, all right, I will take donations of your hand anytime now and say adios to a Channel Mount Heroic. Unfortunately, the gamble that Sam had earlier, that line of play towards going to, finding the finish line of winning the game started with a Channel Mount Heroic on the board and hoping that there was a relatively punchless turn. But he's tossing in there. He's throwing the equipment as well, hoping and praying perhaps maybe that he will have a turn follow-up here. So we'll see how this goes, but he's going to go down to 2. And this is that danger zone, Brian, because there are so many cards with Dominate, especially with no more equipment at your beck and call here, that can just end the game in a hurry.
Yeah, Sam's in a super vulnerable spot. And I go back to that first Channel Mount Heroic Force of Nature turn. Things just didn't break right for Sam. Didn't have quite the right setup for that turn. And you see here, we're just going to fire off this Enlightened Strike. It's a big one. It's going to get a buff from that Channel Mount Heroic. But I don't think this is enough to really affect Michael Hamilton in any meaningful way. You can just sort of soak up this damage and try and come back and attack the life total. Or if you don't have an aggressive hand in your Michael Hamilton, you just make whatever blocks make sense, and you come back with a medium amount of pressure on your next turn.
Yeah, this is a situation, again, where Michael Hamilton just didn't find the pieces he wanted, so he's going to block this out. If he had everything he needed, it would have just been, all right, cool.
No question.
Yeah, just smile and take it, and then, but that's not the case here. So he's going to take 2, I believe, for off the 8 that that Enlightened Strike represented. The card that Sam Dando picked up wasn't all that pretty. Maybe he didn't want to go ahead and follow up. It might be another non-attack, let's say, but he's got an arsenal now. Michael Hamilton only has 2 cards in hand, and he's just swinging hammer, but that hammer is still pretty nasty.
Yeah, annoying. It's an annoying hammer at this point, and if you want to be unabated on your turn, you have to either put 2 cards in front of it or you give up your Bloodsheath Skeletta, which I think is on the table. I don't think that card's actually going to do much else in this game. So we may see a 3-block and a Skeletta block, or if the pieces just aren't set up right, we'll see another 2-block.
Sting of Sorcery and Exude Confidence. Those only block for 2 apiece, so the block has been done. We're all good here. So, oh no, there was also an embodiment there, so there's a potential overblock, but just keeping the Skeletta online, perhaps. Maybe he just likes what he's got.
I think also just wants to move through cards. Again, you have to find specific pieces if you're Sam Dando, and you're running out of time to put them together. So go ahead and get some cards out of your hand, overblock, try and find exactly what you're looking for.
We're going to go ahead and Seeds here, or Crown of Seeds rather, to go ahead and cycle through as basically what was represented here was the Sonata. Now, it's just a Sonata for, I believe, 4 cards, if I'm not mistaken. So far, is it so good? Oh, he's got the full package. All right.
Okay,
so
found a nice split there.
That's a good start, I believe, here. Now, if there's another non-attack action he could pair up with the Sonata, he gets a lightning card. Sorry, an embodiment of lightning. So he gets a go again. So there's still some potential, damage that can be done here from Sam Dando.
Yep. Also, possibly a key shuffle there. We saw Force of Nature, Channel Mount Heroic used as pitch cards pretty early on. Now those are back in play, could make their way back to Sam's hand, and that's what it's going to take to get out of this jam.
Go again on a red. That's 4 go again. Ravenous Rabble. Natural go again. Reveal the top card. It is a Scar for a Scar. And Sam is thinking as well, okay, I'm going to get another go again next turn. So that's not bad. But the problem is that the health total that Michael's holding here is almost too comfortable.
Yeah, very comfortable 16. Michael, though, still blocking. That tells me didn't really have that explosive return fire. That's what he's waiting for. He's waiting for the KO punch. Just put together those elements, get dominate, drop the KO punch. You know there's nothing Sam can do. There's no D-reacts coming your way. So Michael Hamilton very patient here, looking for the window to close this game out. And Sam desperately trying to put together that big combo turn we've been waiting for from this Briar deck.
All right, so this is going to be 2 and 2. I believe he's already paid to block one of those arcanes, so 3 more damage. And now it's 2 to 12. And Michael's got some cards in hand that he could play. He knows that what's coming up off the top, it's going to be a red Scar for a Scar, so he's got some go again potential. But what those other cards are going to be is a mystery. But this is a 7-point Oakenold. No fuse, but I don't think he needs it.
Nope, just demands an answer from the hand. Going to take, hopefully, 2 cards. If you're Sam, you want to have those big 3 blocks in hand to use right now. But as far as putting together a big turn, if Michael is coming at you for 7, it's never going to happen. You just need to be able to hold some cards in hand, and Michael sees that now and just knows the name of the game is firing as large of an attack as you can every single turn until you finally find what you need to close this game out. And there you see Sam just has to give up a Force of Nature due to the buff from that embodiment of Earth. And that's another one of those key combo pieces just not going to get to use.
Here we go. There's a Lightning Surge from Arsenal. 4 go again. We do know that there's already another go again in hand with that with the Scar for a Scar, and we're wondering here, perhaps is he just going to forego an Arsenal to just try to push as much damage as possible?
I think it depends. It depends what Michael Hamilton does here. Any blocking, then you probably just want to set up an Arsenal. If there's no blocking, then you have to try and get a card out of Michael's hand. And I don't know how likely that is. Or if there's equipment blocking, you're going to start sweating a little bit. And this may be the best of both worlds for Michael, just protecting the life total a little bit, saving all those resources. That tells me Sam may not be long for this tournament.
All right, so the Crater Fist is presented here. 2 go 3. You do create an embodiment of Earth, which is going to go ahead and beef up the defense value of your non-attack actions. There's a Scar for a Scar. We knew that was coming around the bend. Another free go again, 4 attack breakpoint value. Now, this is the situation where old school Briar would have been so nice. You collect some of those embodiments of Earth, and it would have been great to see. Ultimately here, Sam Dando is still pressuring. Michael Hamilton is still on double digits, but this Scar for a Scar, which really just looks at the life total to gain that go again, it's still pressure. But you know, Sam at this rate has been clinging to dear life. But keep in mind, not too long ago, this seemed almost completely out of reach. Sam's done a very good job of making this interesting.
Slowly clawing back, I think helped by the fact that Michael Hamilton not able to hit that RNG lottery, not able to find the Bravo fuse to close this game out. And here's what Michael's doing right now, searching through the discard pile, trying to figure out what's left in the deck. How much damage can these two cards possibly represent if I just say, okay, let's do it. Let's go. This is going to be the last 2 turns. Let's see what you got.
I mean, in terms of combat tricks that are still floating around, there's one more lightning press that we have not seen, but I don't think that Michael Hamilton's really worried about a lightning press.
No, that's not a game changer here. It's just got to be something more explosive than that, and that's why you see Michael Hamilton reaching for the pen, taking the damage, saying no matter what that card is, I'm fine, and I'm coming after your head here.
I'm really curious to know what that arsenal is. I really want to see what he's got hiding. So, oh, there
As
it is.
As expected, there is the Bravo fuse, and this might be the death knell for Sam.
He's got all 3 pieces. One of them is a pulse.
What's the follow-up?
So he's just nicely just showing you. I'm not even going to show you what the attack is. It is, in fact, some earth value over there coming in hot and heavy. Dominate, and that's the fist bump, Brian. It was tough work there for Sam Dando in this case, mainly because, you know, those turns where he's supposed to be going off with the force of nature, with the channel mount heroic, and really, you know, pushing the tempo and having those wide turns were completely identified and ultimately stuffed by Michael Hamilton.
You can look at that game and say it was kind of one-sided. I don't believe that. I think if things broke slightly different on that first channel mount heroic turn, we're looking at a completely different game. But it sounds like our players down in the feature match area and the other semifinals are nearing conclusion. We want to get you down there live for the finale as we see who's going to be taking on Michael Hamilton in the finals as he tries to become a 2-time calling champion.
Pheano Black on 3. That is the Prism matchup, and like you mentioned, he has been gobbling
Look
up.
at this, though. I think there's a Pulverize already out there. Dominate, go again, representing 16 damage heading Pheano's way.
We really just came into this game at the right time. It is fireworks both sides. Dave Root is just making sure that, you know, he's on 1. He's at the danger zone here. It could get nasty. We're going to swing for hammer. Pheano Black is on 3. Where's he at here?
All right, so it looks like that damage was already soaked up from the Pulverize. This is the next step beyond that. So we didn't just catch the end of this game. We caught a big turn from D-Rude, but has had his back up against the wall thus far.
Look at that graveyard, though, from D-Rude. D-Rude's got an awakening there. That's the catch-up play that he really needed. So he was really, you know, it was a lot uglier than this.
Yeah, it was up against it for sure.
So, you know, a nice dominate go again off of Pulverize, and look at that. He's going to take a damage here. The Frostbite's going to come through, and Soul Shield is, the Soul Shield's going to go to Soul. There's still an Ode to Wrath here, and like you mentioned last time, if there's a you know, a Spectral Shield, you can sneak in a Merciful Retribution. It can get really nasty here. Look at the equipment, too. Dave Root is just spent completely on equipment.
Yeah, invested so many resources here. Meanwhile, Pheano still has that Arcanite Skull Cop, no counters on it, ready to go. It's never going to get those super effective blocks. Not going to get the 2-block here, but just having any blocks left at this advanced stage of the game is a big deal. And like you mentioned, that Spectral Shield, incredibly threatening right now. That Ode to Wrath just represents an attack, the Spectral Shield represents go again, and that could be all she wrote.
So I think right now what's happening is Dave Root is just evaluating before the Pheano ends his turn whether he wants to cycle and try to go look for something bigger. There's another awakening, and that's really at the point in the game where it is essentially, I don't want to say useless, but it ain't going to get the same effect as it did before.
Yeah, and I think what you're seeing here is D-Root saying, I need to find some dominate. I need to go ahead and make this Starvo. And you saw a little flick of that card as it was pulled off the top. You saw the crowd leaning in. Did D-Root find exactly what was needed here?
From move to Arsenal, the Frostbite is just thought out, no problem. Does D-Root have it? Is he going to push that Starvo forward and perhaps push himself into the final?
I don't see him reaching for it. I don't think we made the fuse we were looking for.
Now, hang tight. He might be just deciding what card he wants to show, or if he's having, again, mistakes do sometimes happen when the stress levels are this high.
Absolutely. Take your time, figure it out. You see some cards separated aside. D-Root having a think here. Can he find these last points of damage? I think I see a Prismatic Shield in Pheano's hand.
Prismatic Shield, it can be dangerous in conjunction with a Merciful Retribution, especially at this juncture. This is a flash that's going to give go again to the next card that has 2 or greater cost. That's what you need to do here. You need to chain attacks together. And there's no response here from any Arclight Sentinel or anything. The flash is going to resolve.
Shock Striker being pitched. Going to produce some resources. Hammer time.
All right, so hammer time makes sense here. I believe that it's just merely from a fact of, you know what, we're just going to sort out our hand a little bit. This flash is not doing anything for me in hand. I'm going to toss it away. This kind of leads me to believe that perhaps he just had a ton of lightning in hand, and that's not what you want to see. But I have been told before that the best Starvo players are the ones that can really make use of these turns where it's not straightforward, where it doesn't look good. So Dave Rude, now you can see he's just kind of really thinking about it as Pheano Black has really taken this to the limit. Pheano, you were mentioning, has just been gobbling up Starvos the entire time. He's not afraid of this matchup.
Absolutely not. No, I think Pheano would choose to play this all day long. And you see, it's a nail biter. It's so close now. And if Pheano's going to win this tournament, he's going to have to get through not only David Rude's Bravo star of the show, but also Michael Hamilton's star of the show. So it's going to be tested. Can Pheano continue to be the Bravo killer?
Dave Rude at 1 is going to essentially shut off the full potential of the Skullcap as well. The Skullcap can only block for 1 if necessary, but if needed, Pheano can also just toss in something like the Tunic as well, if need be. But D Rude is really on the walking the wire here at 1 health, and it could be nasty. The beautiful part about this, if you're Dave Rude, is the fact that there's only one more aura on the board, and it's Ode to Wrath, and Ode to Wrath is not going to factor in because anything that gets through ends the game, so the additional damage is not going to really matter.
Exactly right. Kind of a blank except for its battlefield presence.
So he's thinking here. Pheano is just trying to figure out what is the best opportunity for me to have a turn next turn. He does have an arsenal. He's just going to block 3 here, and he's going to give up the boots, but the boots need to be paid for.
Yeah, this is a lot of resources here to stay at 2 life, not wanting to fall to a 1 life breakpoint for a specific reason, I'm sure. Looks like
Shimmers was pitched, yeah.
Correct.
And this is interesting as well because it does leave 2 floating. You can, if necessary, create a Spectral Shield.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's the play we're going to see here. Shield produced.
Okay, 2 cards in hand, 1 in arsenal. That means that Pheano does have a turn coming up. It could be a 4-drop aura. It could potentially be a pitch for a fairly dangerous, let's say, maybe there's an Erudition lurking about.
I think any Herald could be a fine play here. It's going to be blue into Miraging Metamorph, though. So no go again on that Miraging Metamorph.
If D-Rude has a pop for this, it might not be the end of the world. I mean, it could be just a nice, safe way to do it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Ode to Wrath doing very little at this point. Doesn't really influence the game, short of being another aura. Spectral Shield would be nice, not game-breaking, and that's how D-Rude could possibly put back a big hand. If there's some way to retain Fuse and pop this, it would be absolutely game-breaking, but it looks like we're going to see a blink. That tells me it's time for Crown of Seeds.
So that's going to soak 1 piece of damage, one of that damage. But that Miraging Metamorph coming from Everfest has been such a nasty little addition to the tricks that Prism can present in these matchups. Again, auras are the name of the game here, but Miraging Metamorph in itself is quite the threat.
I think D-Rude's hand is really bad. Like, really, really bad. I think it's all elemental cards, based on my quick read of it, and not particularly good ones either.
All right, so what do we have? There's that an Icy encounter I think I see. I see also a Lightning card and, yeah, more Lightning to be had. So that was a blink, and, oh, man, he must be in a... He had an opportunity here to draw up for the win, and unfortunately that did not happen, but he's going to have to make hay here. And I think that he's doing the right thing perhaps here to block without popping, not creating more situations of... Uh-oh, all right. Well, the shield's going to come through. Okay, now not popping it means that you do not get an extra swing of another Spectral Shields, which could also soak damage. So Dave here is just chucking away the bad cards. But when you're on 1, any card that can block is, I guess, a good card.
Yeah, I mean, they all matter. You have to protect that life total.
He's thinking now, he's got 1 card left in hand. Is it worth it to Arsenal, or is it worth it to swing Hammer? And I honestly believe here that perhaps it's better for him to just Arsenal. It's dangerous because 4 is Here's the thing: is that if you pitch a blue, swing with a hammer, and Pheano just sneaks in that merciful retribution, that is lights out. That's game over.
Yeah, this is just a nightmare situation for David, trying to find the right play. I don't know. I honestly don't know what I would do in this spot. It's too hard to assess. I think the problem is, given that hand that was drawn, I can't say this with certainty because we came into this match late. I would expect that David's on the second cycle now, and I would expect that used a bunch of your weaker cards earlier on to fuel your good cards, and now this is the result of that. I don't know that for sure. I want to emphasize that point. But that was a really weak hand drawn by David, and it looks like exactly the type of stuff that you would be pitching out with the quickness.
Dave has put a lot of work. His team, you could see them behind him. There's Isaac Krupp behind him. I believe Sean Dalla. Well, you can also see Tommy Fresh of the Fresh and Buds podcast is peeking in as well. But Dave has put in a lot of work. That team at Harry Tarantula is a murderer's row of excellent players. So he is prepared for this situation. So, yeah, it looks stressful, but this is a situation that he has been in. He's a gamer, like you mentioned, a pro when it comes to cards. But look at Pheano. Pheano has shown absolutely zero stress.
Yeah, Pheano's been doing this all day. Why would you be stressed? I'm going to go ahead and send in the Herald. Backed up by a yellow pitch. That's going to have go again.
Look at Pheano. Pheano's just kind of, he's feeling it.
Pumping. He's pumping those fists. He thinks the end is near.
Dave continually just looking, maybe checking that arsenal. Has it changed? Is it a D-react suddenly? He's going to go ahead and activate Crown of Seeds, maybe hunting for a better answer here.
Yeah, looking for some meaningful card left in the mix here. Has not found it yet. Again, quick look at the hand. It felt like another all-elemental hand. Not very impressive to me.
Okay, so that looks like a block of...
Double claws.
Oh, no. This is dangerous. There's still 2 cards left and a card in hand. This might just be a situation where you're going to go ahead and sneak in as many of these small attacks to cheat out as many cards out of Dave Root's hand and then finish it off with a Herald that might just end the game. That could be the line that Pheano's seeing here. Again, with an arsenal and 2 cards in hand, there's so many lines that he could take.
I am confident that's what Pheano's doing here. You see Herald of Erudition to be the last card in hand. Does D-Root even have a block? Does not, extends the fist, and Pheano Black moves on to the finals. A beautifully played game, a beautifully played calling, quite frankly. Just a dominant run by Pheano. And Flake, I will tell you, the writers of this tournament have done a fantastic job. Like, they have sprinkled in surprises along the way.
Yes.
They've sprinkled in drama. But you know what? If this calling did not come down to the 2 superstars of this ProQuest season, Bravo versus Prism, it just wouldn't be right. And I'm so happy that's what's ultimately going to decide the champion here at Calling Indianapolis.
When we were all in the writer's room, essentially predetermining this tournament to be this exciting, this was what we envisioned.
Yeah, just all these twists and turns. We knew they'd have you on the edge of your seat, and now we get to this point with the payoff you've all been waiting for. A Calling champion going to be crowned, Prism versus Starvo.
Now, obviously, we're joking about that, but dear goodness me, we couldn't have...
Wait, are you saying they didn't use my script? Because I spent a lot of time on that.
Too many spelling errors.
That's fair.
From an English major.
That's fair.
What the heck? All right, friends, don't go too far. The finals are around the corner, friends. It is the Calling here in Indianapolis. We're going to crown a winner, Prism versus Starvo. Don't go too far. We'll be right back after this break.
Kind of sticking out here in this list. You've got Mulch in the 70 in the list somewhere as well. You know, probably not. Maybe for this matchup. Actually, I've heard them say sometimes they like Mulch in this matchup as well. You see, there's some pulverizes here. There's red lightning surges. Another one we saw that come out of a lot of the European lists as well. So this isn't just your extreme typical list from Starvo, but it's close. This is kind of most of the things you want here. Now, like you said, Isaac going to be attacking a lot early and as much as he possibly can. Justin Evans going to be trying to make as many rune chants as he can, survive as long as he can, and then try to have that big pop-off turn. Now, from my experience in this matchup, the rune chant count needs to be in the mid-20s. Anywhere from like 23 to 26 when you're going off to try to kill Isaac in that one turn.
All right, here we go. Right out of the gate, man. We're going to flash the hotness. That's a pulse. And and completing it up there with the Autumn's Touch, I believe. And frankly, in this case, this is how you want to do. This is how you want to start it off. It's just go straight out to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have Starvo activation from Isaac Kurt here, and it does look like we have a judge call. So it looks like we need to fix a little something here.
No, this is a good opportunity right here is also to talk about the fact that one of those extra spice little hotness cards that we're talking about is exposed to the elements, which is not in this list. That's a card that a lot of players have gone ahead and included in that list as part of a tech, a threatening card, and we've seen not only how that card can be so important in terms of attacking the Skeletta and forcing your opponent in that Viserai list to pop it when they don't want to, which can really dictate how that game's going to end up. If you're forcing your opponent into playing their Skeletta early, they're not getting that kind of range that they may have wanted. If you get them on like 9 or 10 rune chance with the Skeletta, that is a far cry from that 20 to 25 range that they want to be.
Absolutely. And the reason we talk about that, the range of 24 to 25, is because you're going to need to do about 45, maybe even more damage to Bravo to kill them in one turn, right? Because they're going to have a lot of blues to pitch to stop the rune chance. They're going to be able to block a little bit with some of their shields and some of their equipment because you're not pressuring it on any other turn of the game. So you're going to have to push through a ton of damage that turn. I find that in the spot of the Starvo, if you have Starvo's ability in your hand when they're going off, you're supposed to kind of just like clench your butt cheeks and just like let's let it all happen and hope we could activate Starvo and kill him in the next turn.
That's quite a fitting reference after we just had Chipotle. So you're absolutely correct there. I'm not lying. That is exactly what you want to do here.
All right. It does seem like. Okay, so it was just a question about a card here from one of the players, making sure they get the right text on it, play around something at the right way. So we do have an activation of Starvo here, revealing Autumn's Touch. It's going to pitch to cast to play an Oaken Old here. Now, this is one of the cards that you need to be attacking with early and often in this matchup.
Well, part of the game plan here is that the vanilla damage that just leaks through is not really a concern for Viserai. They'll go down to 1 if it means that they'll be able to pull off what they want to pull off. But ultimately, the most important aspect here is holding onto your hand so you can build those rune chants on your off turns when you're soaking damage. And in this case, Oaken Old and Crippling Crush are so important in terms of just shutting down your opponent's resources.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be wanting to draw one of these every single turn. It looks like we got an early block from a Skeletta here, along with a card from hand. And the Grasp of the Arcanite's going to come in here as well.
And it's incredibly dangerous, like I mentioned, because if you do not know that Isaac is not running exposed to the elements, just dropping in.
The game could end right here, actually.
Absolutely,
yeah.
It could end right here. These are situations legit where if you do get the Skeletta, your opponent might just have to completely change gears, and if the deck is not built for that gear shift, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, full block out from Justin there with the defensive reaction, also making another rune chant as well from that. So a huge attack from Isaac, the first big question asked in the game, and Justin came with a really, really good and correct answer here, taking no damage, getting some more rune chants up to 4, but it does look like his turn is just going to be Arsenal and pass here. Not making any more rune chants. You definitely want to be trying to do as much as you can, as many rune chants as you can. Here you see the little shake of the head there from Justin. He's like, not the exact turn I wanted here, but I didn't lose all my cards to that Oaken Old. So it looks like Starvo ability back online and back over to Isaac here.
Yeah, Isaac's just showing another Pulse and another Earth card here in order to just go ahead and turn on the Starvo. And basically, again, it just pedal to the metal. And the beautiful part about this is since Justin's on the OTK plan, you can be patient. You can hold on to that pulse and create a little bit more reliability and consistency in terms of your fuses to have that consistent pressure turn over turn. Now, this is vanilla damage.
This is vanilla damage. Still a lot of it, though. This is a 9 damage attack here from Red Autumn's Touch, and this is probably going to get followed up by an Icy Winter's Wail and Arsenals here. So while this might not be the the big flashy attacks, and like you said, no one hits, so you can kind of assume this physical damage, still getting the job done if we get some damage through, because you want to try to get this life total as low as possible, because you want to force Justin into going off maybe when he's not comfortable or not, oh, I have it all wrapped up. It should be easy from here.
Yeah, Justin just giving a little head shake there. He's not really happy in terms of perhaps what the sequencing is, because obviously you know what's coming up here. And he asked again, what did you fuse? Show me what you had here. So he's just going to go ahead and block this out with the unmovable. I believe about 2 is going to leak through off of this block as well.
Now, Justin might not have as many ruin chances as he wants, as many proactive plays in the last couple turns as he wants, but he's doing a very good job of mitigating damage taken, because he's only down to 38 here, and Starvo's been activated twice this game.
I mean, you're taking stock. We've seen this in so many games of what the high-level players do. They know what those threats are. And in this case, Justin is saying, all right, I've seen an Okanold. There's 2 more. There's likely 3 Crippling Crushes. What else do I have to worry about? Well, perhaps a Spinal Crush. Perhaps maybe if he's paying attention, he knows that Isaac has played Mulch in the past, and that is another threat. So he has to keep track of what needs to be blocked, and this is why sometimes playing it unmovable against the vanilla damage is not necessarily the best option. Holding on to it to stuff an Okanold is often a better play.
Yeah, it looks like Justin's really unhappy with his hand here, too. We get another double block here from him, just blocking out more of that damage. Winter's Wail, that was a warm 4. We're going to make that stick, by the way.
The warm 4.
Yeah, no ice.
Coming in for a nice room temperature 4.
Yeah, exactly. No frostbite on hit here. So it looks like it was just an arsenal of pass here from Justin. We're back over to Isaac. Looks like still got that pulse in his hand. I see a Mulch, which isn't an Earth card itself. It needs to be Earth fused to be used. Really important card in this matchup. If you could ever catch one of the really important, something like Become the Arc Knight or something, one of those really big, impactful cards from Justin, you could swing a game really in your favor here. Now, Justin might be a 38 here. It's 38 to 40. Tons of damage has been thrown Justin's way. He's been able to answer it. The real thing that's important here, there's only 4 rune chance on that side.
That's what, again, I've mentioned this in the past, and we saw this in Austin Yost's game. It's not about paying attention to the life total for Justin. It's paying attention to the rune chant count, because that's a very good indicator as to when that's going to pop off. I mean, obviously, there's a little bit of a timer there, and eventually he's going to run out of runway in terms of when he can just kind of, take off with that rocket ship. But ultimately, you need to be at 20 plus to even have a sniff at getting this to pop off. And Justin is just not, unfortunately for Justin, I think that he's blocking out here because he needs to cycle cards and he's not finding what he needs.
It does feel that way. Now the Tunic up to 3. This is where the Starvo deck gets really, really good. And it looks like we're going to get Tunic for a little bit of resources here. And it looks like Mulch is going to get an attack here. I don't think we have the Earth card diffused here, though. So this looks like a generic. Is that a red one? It looks like a generic 8.
That's a red one, right? That is one of the 2 Mulches that he's playing in. A very clutch card here. Now, it says if it was fused, there's an on-hit effect of basically blow up the arsenal. And it all comes down to this, ladies and gentlemen. It is the calling in Indianapolis. I'm Matt DeMarco, a.k.a. Flake. I am not a racehorse, and this is Brian Gottlieb. And dear goodness, you are a pro at this. It has been an honest pleasure to do so, but the best is yet to come, Brian.
Flake, I can't tell you how much fun I've had this weekend working with y'all. I think we've really shown why Flesh and Blood is such a special game this weekend. The games we've had on camera have just been outstanding. Great game after great game after great game. That's a feature, not a bug. That's how this goes, folks. This is how we play Flesh and Blood, and it's not over yet. We have a heck of a finals coming up. Let's see how we got there as we go ahead and look at our top 4 bracket.
Oh, man, the Starvo Hunter, Pheano Black, who was really the #1 seed by a full game, just absolutely posterizing Jordan style the entire field up until 10-0, and then finishing off with 11-1 to it got through Dave Rude, and that's no small task in itself. So Pheano Black on Prism is going to be one half of this bracket.
Absolutely feasted on Bravos all day. That was the matchup Pheano played the most, and it was, I believe he said, 4 non-Bravo matchups throughout this entire tournament, and just played those Bravos and kind of owned them on the way to this top 2 performance. Over on the right side of the bracket, you've seen a bunch of Michael Hamilton, kind of been the superstar of the tail end of this tournament, looking to become a 2-time calling champion. That's such a huge deal. Like, that's at the infancy of this game to establish yourself as one of the absolute elites. Now going to be mentioned if Michael Hamilton is able to finish this tournament. And quite frankly, whether he wins or not should be mentioned in the same breath with the Tarek Patels, with the Matt Rogers, just proving to be an absolutely dominant force at this game.
No, absolutely, and this is like you mentioned, it's with the game being so young in its competitive scene. We haven't even had a pro tour yet, and Michael Hamilton is really establishing himself not just as a top tier player, but really a control master. And we've been discussing the decks and such, and just how he's approached each matchup. We're going to go to the deck list now to show you what each of these players are bringing to the party. We're starting with Pheano Black, and here's the deck that he's bringing. It's Prism, and like you mentioned, he has absolutely just been gobbling up all of those Starvo matches. Just give me all those Starvos. I'll take care of them. Let's walk through this list real quick here.
Yeah, so here's the main unique features of Pheano Black's list. 3 Command and Conquer. I don't think that's a big deal in this matchup. Starvo's too good at controlling their arsenal. We'll just move it out of the way with Crown of Seeds. 3 Prismatic Shield. That has been a big deal against these Starvos. That's how Pheano gets wide. And Prismatic Shield has been a hotly debated topic in this deck. More and more players have moved away from reds, finding them to be a liability, taking you off those 2 aura turns that are so critical for getting the ball rolling. Pheano kind of going in the opposite direction, leaning into those reds, not only in the Prismatic Shield, but also in these D-Reacts. It's 3 unmovable, 3 sink below, and of course those 3 soul shields. Those are going to be absolutely invaluable in stopping Starvo's offense.
Yeah, 3 unmovables has kind of been a very clutch piece of Prism just surviving those big turns where Starvo wants to come in with an Okanold or a Crippling Crush or something along those lines to really not just do damage, but also buy some of those hand pieces. But what's also important to note here with Prism is that a lot of those key pieces, like those 4-cost auras, are dropped at instant speed. And that's just not a plug in my podcast, my friend. I'm talking to you big time here that you can be able to take the damage, and before those triggers are stacked, you can sneak in those cards before they become just garbage, right? So being able to tank damage and still get value out of a turn is an important aspect to how Prism handles those Starvo games.
Yeah, and you can't understate the importance of Arclight Sentinel. It's kind of a shame the big Arclight Sentinel turn we saw in our cast got blown out. It got destroyed by Blink, but it can be such an effective shutdown mechanism against those big awakening turns. But as you'll see when we get to Michael Hamilton's list, doing things a little bit different for a Starvo. This does not look like the rest of the room's Starvo list. There's way more D-Reacts. There's no Awakenings. Just not interested in the card whatsoever. And that is a huge departure from the vast majority of the field here.
Awakening is the catch-up card, right? And a lot of players are either, even if you're not putting it into the Prism list, you have it in your 80 because it's so valuable in the mirror match where you do fall behind. And we saw how important that was in a previous matchup where Dave Rude had it. And then we cut into that matchup where Dave Rude came back at Prism with a 14 attack, dominated go again, 16 attack dominated go again, pulverize off the Awakening. But Michael Hamilton is not interested. Michael Hamilton is interested in digging in his heels and really just playing the defensive game. 3 staunch response, 3 turn timbers, 2 sink belows, and you do have the Pulse of Eisenloft as another follow-up potential D-React if necessary. He wants to play the long game. He's not afraid of getting nasty here.
Yeah, Michael Hamilton is built different as a player and as a deck builder. This just does not look like the typical list. And Pheano has been the Starvo killer. I don't think he's really faced a Starvo like this. Like, this is a different look, and he's going to have to adjust some of his play patterns to account for what Michael Hamilton has done. Obviously, Michael Hamilton did not make it through unblemished, has had his struggles, wasn't completely dominating the field the way Pheano did, but when push came to shove, Michael Hamilton was up to the task every single time.
I just want to show you all out there in terms of how tense these matchups have been. This is the pen that I was using. See this? It is now
broken in half.
Completely, because it has been this the entire time, because these matchups have been incredibly tense, Brian. We've seen just how amazing Michael has piloted the Starvo. Typically you're thinking, all right, fuse and swing. That ain't the way that Michael wants to do this. He's dancing to a different tune here, but again, he is up against, like you mentioned, the absolute Starvo predator. Pheano Black on Prism knows what he's talking about, and all these debates that we were discussing discussing, how many reds? The amount of reds here, 18 total reds in Pheano's list, would make the standard Prism player kind of just gag a little bit, like, ugh, you don't want to draw that, you don't want to play that.
I've seen lists with 6. I mean, that's how low some players are going at this point. So 18 is just so far afield, but Pheano is making it work, showing that you still need to be able to get wide to find that pressure as Prism. And I think the prismatic shields have been really impressive in the games I've seen thus far.
The difference here is we're going to see how I don't think we've watched. Have we? I haven't cast a Michael Hamilton Starvo against Prism. I don't know if you guys had one on earlier or not. Either way, the way that Starvo typically handles Prism with this brand new not brand new aura build, with this revamped aura build, is it's pressure face, and with the second attack, you're going to clean out an aura. You have blinks to help you out. You've got time skippers to help you out.
Lead the charge here for Michael Hamilton, dude. That's the piece he's using to get a little bit extra width in his game plan, as well as those time skippers. Going to obviously be leveraging that. But this is a weird list. As I went throughout the day talking about Michael Hamilton's list, I said it was the mirror killer. That's what it's set up to do. But as I get deeper and deeper into it, I look at it, I think it might be the field killer. I think it's just an incredibly well-built Starvo list. We saw it now go up against Chain. We saw it go up against Briar. It was up to the task every single time. And when I actually break down the cards that are being played, it does seem like there's enough outs to be able to get those go wide turns. There's really good ways for challenging the Heralds out of Pheano's deck. And I don't know how much that's going to be a huge factor in determining the game. We talked about how important it is to set up your aura stuff, but when you get those free blocks too, that just means more resources when you come back on your next turn. You start the ball rolling in your favor.
I think I've got a lot of confidence in here with Pheano because of the fact that, like you mentioned, he's just been just eviscerating every Starvo that he's played. But again, Michael Hamilton is already a calling winner, having won the calling in Orlando. Here he is in the finals again. Both players, you have the top seed versus a champion, essentially, who has basically proven that the way that he plays, he's, like you said, he's built different, and so is this deck. It is built in a different capacity.
I'm going to put you to the test here, Flake.
Yes, I'm ready.
I'm going to make you pick a winner. Who do you got? Who do you think, now we've broken down these decks?
The viewers.
Okay. Flake's going to cop out. I'm going to tell you I'm picking Michael Hamilton. There's been something special about his play today, and I don't want to take anything away from Pheano. Both these players have been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal all day long, exhibited absolute mastery of their decks, but something about being that 2-time calling winner, just like, it'll ring different. And we need to start establishing our heroes of the Flesh and Blood circuit, and Michael Hamilton making a good case to be, the control players' control person, the Guardian Master, the Runeblade Killer, building a legend for himself here at the Calling Indianapolis.
I mean, creating that kind of narrative is always awesome, but he's doing it himself. Like you mentioned, Michael Hamilton, is he the villain? Is he the hero here? It depends who you're rooting for. Sometimes the biggest pops come for the heel in these cases. And Pheano Black on Prism, I'm honestly feeling, I'm like, it's hard not to carry the momentum and the confidence. When you're confident, sometimes, I don't want to say you take more risks, but you do play more to your strengths. When you're a little bit more nervous and you feel like you don't have it in you, you become a little bit more defensive. Maybe you're not certain about how you're going to play, and that's where mistakes creep in. Doubt is one of the biggest detriments to a player, but both of these players here in the final, Michael Hamilton, returning champ, master of this domain, so to speak, Pheano Black, top seed, crushing every Starvo. We could not have scripted it better. If you believe in those kinds of conspiracies.
If you saw my script, it was not this good, honestly.
No, it was not.
That's why I was thrown
There
out.
was sharks in tornadoes and stuff involved.
It really got out of hand at some point, and I don't know. I blame just too much downtime and too much creative freedom. Sometimes you have to reel in your creators, and they just really let me go with this one.
I mean, I picked up your script, and on the one line I read was somehow Palpatine returned, and I was like, that's it. Tear it up.
It just seemed to fit, given everything that was going on. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe I just lost the thread somewhere.
Okay, so Pheano Black versus Michael Hamilton, and in the top 8 over here, both players will have access to each other's deck lists. So there's a lot of study going on because
I love that you mentioned that, Flake. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Michael Hamilton sits down in the feature match area and just studies the deck. I think he's committing it to memory. I really think he knows every single card, decides what he thinks they're going to present. Michael Hamilton right now, I will tell you, we've been ready to go to a feature match for a few minutes now. We've been back in the booth talking, sharing our opinions, but, we were ready to cast it. Michael Hamilton's still looking at the deck list, just studying, trying to get every single insight he possibly can. And I think that tells you what type of student of flesh and blood Michael Hamilton aspires to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've casted a lot of high-end tournaments in my day, and the one thing that I've always noticed is that the players that are left at the end of the day, the ones who are playing in the finals, are the ones who are committed from the get-go, from round one to the finals. They have the same killer instinct. They're the ones who are there, and now that you're given more information, Michael Hamilton is just eating it like this information sandwich. He just wants this in his blood. He wants it in his DNA, so that as soon as things are presented, it is just instant response, that you are there, you know your deck list, and you know how it's going to interact with what's presented in your way.
You think that he's just got the game mapped out so beautifully in his head. He thinks exactly how it's going to go, thinks about all his possible cards, thinks about all the opponent's possible cards, and plays to that. And it's such a well-suited style for a Guardian Master. I mean, it's a shame that we couldn't see Michael run back Oldhim, because now I just want to watch his Oldhim matches. Those particular matches, very few of them were streamed live. But now I'm like, well, what does he do when he just gets to go pure defense? Like, how cerebral is he in that situation?
I know this is just kind of like a hybrid to a degree, right? It's got both ends. You can go crazy and start swinging like a madman, or you can just kind of sit back and turtle up. And those Oldhim matches are going to be things of study that people are going to look at. If Oldhim ever wheels back in, as being one of those viable heroes, people are going to go back and look at those Michael Hamilton games, because he was the one who put that hero on the map when everyone thought that it was just going to be Briar's world and Lexi was going to maybe tickle the edges a little bit. But Oldhim, it has a calling win, and it's because of Michael Hamilton.
No, you're exactly right. I want to talk about one more thing when it comes to prognostication and picking our potential winners. If Bravo wins this tournament, those Living Legend points go up. And that's a big deal right now. Everyone's talking about it. Is Briar going to be the first hero, or excuse me, is Bravo going to be the first hero to eclipse that Living Legend total? A win here at the call in Indianapolis would be even more points under Bravo's belt, getting even closer. Now, it's going to be there at the Pro Tour. We know that. It's going to be at Pro Tour 1. It's not going to hit the Living Legend status before then. But come the next set, it's possible.
It's more than possible. I mean, you're going to be accumulating so many points. Let's be real. After 5 or 6 weeks, he already lapped Chain.
Yeah.
And Chain had terrorized the meta for so long. So Starvo really has shown that he is the star of the show. And every single pie chart that I have seen regarding ProQuest statistics, he has always had the fattest piece. Exactly. And at this rate, I think that these kinds of big tournaments, again, there's no online client for this. The best snapshots we have are things like this. These callings are the best information that we're going to get in terms of where the game is heading from a meta perspective, because this is where the best players are playing for the biggest stakes. So they're putting in the work to basically figure it out for us. And at the end of the day, when we're looking at these statistics and we're saying that, okay, maybe Starvo isn't the best, because maybe Viserai isn't the best, because there wasn't a single Viserai in the top 8, and everyone was thinking that, you know what, Viserai might be the dark horse here. Not so dark horse, because it's part of that triangle of doom, but I think that everybody's talking about Starvo and what can beat Starvo, where Viserai was probably going to sneak in there. But ultimately, if Pheano Black could come in here with such an unorthodox list of Command and Conquer, 18 reds in general, that turns things a little bit upside down.
Unquestionably, both players have shown neither of these decks is done. We don't have a finished state for either Bravo, either Prism, but whatever player wins this event is going to do a lot to set the metagame heading into that first Pro Tour.
And I think we're almost about ready to go to that first game. It is the finals here at the Calling in Indianapolis. Pheano Black, the #1 seed, versus Michael Hamilton, the ultimate Guardian Control master, the 6th seed, who has really gone through such a gauntlet of chains and briars, things that you're not probably prepared for, you haven't put in too much practice against, but he did go through, maybe digging into some of that last year's meta, that muscle memory to win these. But here we go, right out of the gate, Pheano Black, 2 aura start.
Huge start from Pheano.
And look at him, he's just kind of saying, all right, that's a little sweet right there. No problem, I'll take that all day long. Some Merciful Retribution, and there's a Shimmers on the board. That's a great start. Absolutely ideal start here for Pheano Black. Again, jamming out the Merciful Retribution, which is already in itself a great one to have. Shimmers, presenting a lot of threats. And right away, time skipper boots.
Yeah, Michael Hamilton not willing to let this go ahead and snowball on him. Going to use that winner's wail to go ahead, take out a merciful retribution, and I have a feeling second attack probably going to clean up this Shimmers of Silver as well.
Must be. You have to. This is exactly what those boots are there for. And early on in this metagame, Prism was really dominating Bravos a lot more regularly because Bravos weren't using time skippers.
Yep.
They were relying on things like Blink to get the job done. And back in the day, you used to use, this time snap potion in order to go ahead and find those extra action points. But this is it. So we're going to start by cleaning things up. But Pheano has a full grip here, so he might be able to actually just sneak something else out if he wants to.
Yeah, we'll see if there's another aura in hand.
So the hammer's being presented. I'm not sure which one he's poking at, but I would imagine it's Merciful Retribution.
My guess as well. I wasn't 100% on that, but we'll see that resolved as Pheano makes a decision here. It does seem like there's a play available to Pheano going into the tank, trying to figure out how to get maximum value out of this hand. Facing the first salvo from Michael Hamilton, just a little go wide, control these auras.
All right, so that's the case. It's going to go to Soul. It's going to deal 1 arcane damage going the other way. Michael Hamilton is just going to take it, no problem. And hey, why not? A free Lightning Surge is going to clean up the Shimmers. That is an effective response to what Pheano Black was leaning on being a massive opener.
Yeah, that's why Lightning Surge is just so important as one of the Lightning cards that Bravo has access to. You know, you think of Bravo, it's not an aggressive deck. It's not the type of deck that uses Lightning Surge typically. It just needs a free attack, and it's able to do so while getting a checkbox for that lightning element that allows Bravo to trigger.
In reality, I think that was a perfect hand there for Michael Hamilton as a response. You think that Pheano was like, wow, what a perfect hand, and Michael's like, wow, what a perfect response. So if both players now are coming in real nice. Now, this is a dangerous game to play here. You've pitched to play Miraging Metamorph. A lot of players will just snap drop a card to pop that, but at the instant speed, you can go ahead and drop with another blue. And if he drops a blue and has another 4-drop aura, that is a real trap.
Yep.
So Michael Hamilton, again, no sloucher. He sees that one a mile away.
Yeah, Pheano's setting it up. And I think I'm suspicious if I'm Michael Hamilton, given how long Pheano thought on the last turn. It seems like potentially setting up for that Phantasm Pop instant speed aura. I think maybe Michael Hamilton sniffing it out here, just going to go ahead, throw that Pulse in front. Again, a key resource, Pulse. Michael Hamilton not afraid to go ahead and convert that onto defense.
All right, so there's the blue, and that card in pocket could potentially be, if we're really reading the runes here, that's probably a 4-drop aura. But again, Michael Hamilton, like you mentioned, very committed to the defensive side of things. A lot of players would have just absorbed that 7, but if he doesn't like the hand, but he'd had a Pulse, like you mentioned, just tossing it out into the wilderness.
Yeah, it sees this as critical. Just maintain battlefield priority, maintain at least parity, and never let that Prism deck really get rolling. And I am so interested to see how this matchup develops over time. Both players proving themselves masters of this archetype. Both have taken down many of the opposing decks on the way to sitting here at the top of calling Indianapolis, but there can only be one winner.
All right, so Pheano is holding on to an unmovable. I believe there's a Genesis in there. He's taking a peek at the arsenal, getting all the information ready to go. That unmovable is key against a Starvo player. Sorry, most Starvo players, because we've seen the patience that Michael Hamilton has. He's not necessarily the most aggressive Starvo player, and that was from an arsenal. So there you go. That was exactly the trap that Pheano was trying to lay, but Michael Hamilton really danced around all of those little pitfalls.
Yep, that's the type of trap that really moves you through those early rounds, and then you run up against a player like Michael Hamilton, and it just might not work anymore. And Flake, this is the first chance we've had to really talk about it. I want to talk about Crown of Reflection being the choice for Pheano. Haven't seen a ton of Crown of Reflection thus far today. It's been mostly Arcanite Skullcap. I think that's a big difference here, and I think it shows how committed Pheano is to his game plan. We talk about Michael Hamilton doing things a little different. Pheano does too. I don't want to take any of that away from Pheano. If I'm focusing too much on Michael Hamilton, that's not fair. Pheano deserves just as much credit for innovating his archetype and doing things differently, and Crown of Reflection points to exactly that.
Yeah, well, the Crown of Reflection in this case is just in a way to sort of go ahead and drop a blue and, without losing your action point. You know, there's no go again when you drop that blue aura in there. You just crack it again. The Arcane Barrier is completely negligible. Here is some tech, my friend. This is the card you were mentioning.
getting wide again with that lead the charge. Going to go ahead and fire off 2 attacks on this turn, we assume. Going to start with an Autumn's Touch. It's going to clean up. Look how committed Michael Hamilton is to this plan. It just keeps cleaning up. Time to take out that Merciful Retribution, and I bet we're probably going after that Passing Mirage next.
Yeah, he's pointing to the lead. The charge says, all right, I gain an action point. The next time you play an action card with cost 2 or greater, gain 1. So that is exactly what happens. So lead the charge gives him another chance to swing again and to go ahead full Zamboni mode and start cleaning up these auras. But again, Pheano Black has the luxury of basically playing at instant speed, but it's a dangerous game to go ahead and drop a valuable aura on the board with an action point still there. So I think Pheano's not really going to respond to this unless it's with perhaps an Arclight Sentinel. But even then, I don't think this is the right time for that. I think he's just sort of evaluating and just taking some time to breathe here. Again, this is for all the marbles. This is the finals, Brian. And again, that's 2 Merciful Retributions off the board. And like you mentioned, endgame, those can be dangerous.
They absolutely can, especially against Michael Hamilton's configuration. We see some people use Arcane Barrier. I agree with Michael Hamilton. I think that's giving up too much for a pretty narrow situation. You're just supposed to control things the way Michael is thus far, and doing an excellent job at keeping these auras off the battlefield. Of course, that Lead the Charge, very different from Go Again. As we mentioned, Go Again isn't going to let you clean multiple auras. Lead the Charge will, because it gives you an action point, not Go Again.
Michael Hamilton does have an arsenal now. He's taken 5 damage over the course of this game, but the most important thing that he needs to be keeping track of is the fact that he's cleaned up a hell of a lot of auras, as Pheano Black is just continuously to dump these auras on the board that are really the bread and butter of what this deck wants to do. However, Michael's been up to the task. There's an Otarath, and Otarath is a nice one to have. Again, Otarath is a card that upon attacking, if that connects, it's an additional loss of life, and this can have some significant implications in terms of just the severity of each one of those attacking auras.
Especially in Pheano's deck, when we were looking at things like Spectral Shield, Pheano's really good at putting a lot of Spectral Shields out there onto the field and getting wide and just making multiple attacks. So I am usually pretty medium on Otarath's impact on the game. I think it's a completely different ballgame when it comes to Pheano's list.
So there it is. It's another attack. Michael Hamilton just happy to take the 2 off of the Otarath, and sure, why not? But hey, we're going to go ahead and create another Spectral Shield, and I believe we're going to swing with it as well. So that's exactly what Michael's just kind of digesting here. But again, the fact that each of those auras that are swinging in typically for 1 damage, Otarath makes that a little bit more dangerous. So he's going to take another 2 off of the Spectral Shield damage, and we're going to go ahead and pass that turn. Still an arsenal card for Pheano, and I'm wondering if that is that unmovable that we saw earlier.
I think so, Flake. I haven't seen it go anywhere else. It would make sense for that to be the unmovable. So that kind of commits Pheano to playing a little slower, but is that playing into Michael Hamilton's hands? Because Michael isn't really coming with those big attacks. If Pheano just gives up the arsenal to put the unmovable there and Michael Hamilton plays this game, just take out those auras, take out those auras, take out those auras, it's really going to actually slow down development for Pheano. And you're seeing his hand get sort of gummed up. There's a soul shield in it, there's the unmovable, and there's no targets for it. And this is what we saw the first time Michael Hamilton took down Chain, is that Chain had all these unmovables and wanted to answer Hamilton's attacks. They just never came.
Yeah, no, Michael's doing a very good job here, coming out with the Swiffer Sweeper, saying, all right, I got another one that I can clean up, and I can, add an attack to this. This might be just a situation, I think, where Michael Hamilton, he could potentially swing face and just clean up some of those Spectral Shields as well. But there is possibly, though it's completely far-fetched, you just pass with the extra action point and freeze Pheano from playing at instant speed, another one of those important auras. But I don't think so. I think he's got a hammer swing associated with this too. And if possible, he's looking to just clean up a few of those Spectral Shields that are just sort of, floating about.
The more I see Michael's deck, the more I think it's just built brilliantly. I think it's so well put together, so thoughtful. Just small things like leaning on something like Disable in the blue slot. Disable as a card is not going to have a huge impact on arsenals in many scenarios. It's pretty easy to block out, but it blocks for 3. And Michael Hamilton is so cognizant of the block value of every single card in the deck, pitch value of every single card in the deck, just making sure he can play in exactly the fashion we're seeing.
Yeah, he is just a clean freak at this point. He doesn't want to see anything left on the board. He's just doing a good job. Now, keep in mind, of all the lead the charges that Michael Hamilton has in the deck, he has played 2 and he has pitched 1. So that's it. That's all. But keep in mind, 3 blinks is another way to go ahead and get a 2-for-1 action when it comes to cleaning up some of those auras. Is Pheano here is just going to go ahead and play a Herald, a Wartune Herald, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is a okay, so it's a yellow Wartune Herald. It is just a 6 attack. The on hit here is purely just to go to Soul, but what he does here is he pops it.
Yeah, there you see that disable coming through with its large attack value. All the more willing to go ahead and pop those Phantasm attacks. However, we are going to have the Phantasmal Footsteps go ahead and restore the action point. Going to get in with a second Herald. Herald of Triumph this time, I believe.
Yeah, the Herald of Triumph is the next one that's coming through. Again, the Phantasmal Footsteps is so clutch in these matchups because of the rescuing of the action point. But again, all right.
Has it again. Glacial Footsteps. Going to go ahead and pop that one.
And the Herald of Triumph in that case does make your defending attacks -1, so you need a 7 or greater to pop it. And he's like, how about 8? I got some change for you too.
There's a reason why these high attack value blues are so present through Michael's list. It's this matchup.
He has been so, yeah, you know what, I honestly, Michael Hamilton's success really started weeks and weeks ago when he starts designing and playtesting these decks, and sometimes looking outside the box with Lead the Charges. And you know, Lead the Charge wasn't on the radar until relatively recently, and Glacial Footsteps was nowhere on the radar, I believe, for anybody.
Yeah, it's been a super rare occurrence that I've seen Glacial Footsteps show up in these Bravo lists, and maybe even less so disabled. Just not a card that's present all that much. But look how effective it's all been. It's all coming together thus far for Michael Hamilton. The question that is going to absolutely determine this match: how does Michael Hamilton start winning the game? It's one thing to not lose the game. You ultimately got to win the game.
Yeah.
How does Michael Hamilton really plant his flag in that endeavor?
I mean, the traditional way that these matchups go is that Starvo is swinging for the fences, and, you know, Prism goes down to 20 or sub 20, and then in exchange for a development of the aura game, and then Prism can come back. I have seen games that have been essentially 35 to 7 or 8 around that range, and then Prism starts clawing back slowly but surely. Like you mentioned, death by 1,000 cuts. You go in with all of those auras coming through, and in this case, basically, it has been Michael Hamilton who has said, no, I can play the slow game too. So we're going to just continue to play it slow, swing hammer, clean up all the auras. And in this case, that hammer is just absorbed, and I think Pheano Black might be coming back with a nice attack here.
Yeah, going to go ahead and take some damage for the first time here. That points to certainly a more explosive turn from Pheano. Has that Tunic ready to go, so more resources available on this turn.
That Frostbite is an aura, and you will find out the hard way when you see a Merciful Retribution on the board and you take 1 damage because you gave your opponent a Frostbite. That is something to keep in track of. So I believe that is a blue Wartune Herald pitching 2, absorbing the Frostbite in this case, coming in for 5, if I'm not mistaken, on hit Soul.
That looks correct to me as well, Flake, and we'll have to see what Michael Hamilton wants to do for defense here. You know, throwing a lot of praise Michael's way, but Pheano also cool, calm, collected, very willing to go ahead and just expend some resources, run Michael really out of the things that he needs to use to go ahead and control this field. But I think we just maybe have hit that point where Michael says, okay, I've got my own things to say about this matchup now. I have something to do, bring some damage my way, and I'm going to throw some back your way too.
You know, you can see it in the eyes, the focus and a little bit more of the strain from Michael Hamilton. He looks like he is just really dead set on keeping all the outside noise just completely muted. And you look at Pheano and he's a little bit more relaxed. He's a little bit more laid back. He's looking at his opponent. He's just kind of just biding his time and just breathing slower. The intensity that Michael's bringing to this game is essentially countered by Pheano, who seems to be, like you mentioned, cool, calm, collected the whole way through.
I will say this about Pheano. Pheano has had an incredibly relaxed demeanor throughout the weekend. Always jovial, always joking with his opponents. It's kind of toned that down in this matchup. See much more quiet, much more focused, sitting there, hands crossed, looking to see exactly what Michael Hamilton is trying to do. Look, has taken the tournament seriously the entire time, but has kind of stepped it up to another level where, you know, the time to kind of interact with my opponent is over. I am in hard focus mode. I'm going to figure out a way to become calling Indianapolis champion.
So the activation of Crown of Seeds here is going to take one off of that, but we're just going to pop it anyways, I believe, at this point. And, you know, if that's the whole turn, then that's the whole turn. Michael Hamilton has done a great job of just mitigating a lot of the damage, but it seems like Pheano has side of, I don't want to say it's intentional, but it seems like he's pivoted off of Auras to go Heralds. But here's the clapback we found of an Earth card, and we found a Pulse. It is time to get nasty, and that is a 7, a red or evergreen, if I'm not mistaken, come in for 9, dominate, go again. So here comes Michael Hamilton back into the fray.
Yeah, and if you're Pheano, I think if you have any kind of hand to answer back with, you just say, okay, this is not an on-hit. You're not really disturbed by this at all. And I'm looking at Pheano's hand. I see a Genesis. I see some other aura options. I might just use this as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm trading some life points at this point to try and set something up. I haven't been able to make a battlefield thus far. You can have my life points, Michael. You just can't have my auras.
There's a Celestial Cataclysm in there, I see. Another Herald. I believe that's a blue, it could be a Haze Bending, if I'm not mistaken, just kind of peeking at the cards as Pheano's going through. And like you mentioned, spot on there, Brian. He's going to say, no problem. I can eat this. No, you know, no worries. I've got something to do on my turn as well. As really, Michael Hamilton has given Pheano a lot of leeway up to now. Hasn't really had too much aggression, but he's going to go through and just start doing the damage himself, and he's going to respond with that Genesis, and that is a massive piece here.
Yeah, and Pheano with additional cards in hand, able to go ahead and use that Genesis. Going to go ahead and send the Celestial Cataclysm to the Soul, draw a card.
So that is a light card. It is not an illusionist
Correct.
card.
No Spectral Shield here.
And that can factor in, but ultimately the card draw is pretty good. Now, there's no Vestige of Soul here, so you're not getting any bonus off the pitch, but he is going to be swinging in with Genesis. Keep in mind, it does not have Go Again yet, but you can find a way to sneak that through.
Yeah, absolutely. Cards in the Soul, so possible to make a Prismatic Shield. Do you think there are still cards in Pheano's hand right now?
Yeah, there it is. Get rid of that Soul Shield. He's saying, all right, well, you're not attacking, so I don't need these D-reacts that much. We're going to create a Spectral Shield, get the Go Again off that first attack of the Genesis, and now I'm starting to, again, build up that board state. Michael Hamilton did so much work early on with the time skippers and 2 times lead the charge to go ahead and pressure and eliminate so many of those auras, and he's still got work to do.
Yeah, Michael now looking for a 5-card hand. Going to go ahead and cash in that Tunic for that combo we've talked about all weekend long. Crown of Seeds plus Tunic leads to 5-card hands and a little bit of defense as well. So can Michael Hamilton continue to seize on some of that initiative we saw last turn with the first Starvo activation coming through?
And it's possible now that we can go back to one of those original strategies that Starvo typically leans on, which is big attack to face, create pressure, swing hammer at something that's important. In this case, you have a Genesis and a Haze Bending. Now, those are both very, very big cards. But there it is. There's the Starvo revealing. We've got a Winter's Bite. We've got the Heaven's Claws and an Evergreen. Now, it's going to be pressure to face here. There's no way to really go ahead and clean out 2 auras at once. So we're just going to go with the red Evergreen for 9, dominate, go again. One of those is going to get soaked by the Spectral Shield, but you're going to see a follow-up on the hammer. Now, I have my leanings here in terms of what I want to clean up, but both of those auras seem quite tantalizing to swing a hammer at.
Here's the thing, Flake. I would go after the Genesis. I have a feeling Michael Hamilton is going to surprise me. I think his focus on keeping the battlefield clean is so integral to the game plan here. Haze Bending going to represent multiple Spectral Shields over the course of this game, and I just don't think Michael Hamilton's game plan accounts for that. I think it has to take out the Haze Bending, and obviously Genesis can do the same thing, right? That's the problem here. And maybe you're just in a no-win situation, and you go ahead and eat the Genesis, and I'm overthinking this. I am just going to shut up as an analyst here and see what Michael does, because I think that's the only way we're going to have clarity.
It's tough to really read Michael because of how he's been playing Starvo, a little bit more unorthodox than most of the field, but here he is standing on top, so you're like, okay, well, I got to trust his opinion.
I want to learn from him at this point. I want to know what he's doing a little bit differently.
So 9 attack is going to get soaked, but look at that. There is that unmovable. You mentioned that was just kind of a slog in the arsenal, I think. That one wasn't from hand, if I'm not mistaken. That was just I believe that was from Arsenal.
I believe you're correct, Flake.
All right, no problem. So, hey, Genesis it is. I guess we're still kind of good at this game, huh? You and I figured.
Got a little in my own head there, but ultimately Genesis is Genesis, and you got to take it out to be able to move on.
All right, so there should be a spectral shield. All right, so there should be a spectral shield that's coming out over here, if I'm not mistaken, off of the haze bending, if I'm not kind of losing my marbles here. So perhaps that Pheano maybe just missed that one, because haze bending should have given him a spectral shield off of the destruction of Genesis.
I think you're correct, Flake, but not seeing it here.
All right, so Michael Hamilton is still getting the job done, pushing 9 damage to face. Obviously, that was met and basically stuffed by an unmovable, but at the same time, we're still getting some work done here. As you know, we did manage to get rid of one of those massive pieces of Genesis. Genesis is incredibly important.
Yeah, haze bending's still present, but I think that Genesis just could have spiraled this game very quickly with a few good hits. And Michael's entire game plan is saying, don't let the game spiral, don't let the game spiral, don't let the game spiral. And now, gonna see if there's any kind of answer from Michael. Pheano's life total, you know, creeping down. That's kind of the way this matchup is going. A little bit here, a little bit there. Both players giving up some life total.
All right, so a little bit more of that jovialness, as you mentioned, as the players are getting a little bit, you know, lighthearted, and they're just feeling that perhaps some of that stress is melting away. You're in the spot now. You've lived in the stress. You've been on camera multiple times by now. Let's have some fun. And
yeah, there reaches a point, Flake, where you're just like at home. You've spent all day in the feature match area. I mean, Michael Hamilton has played how many matches on camera in a row now, and it just feels like the right place. It feels like where you belong. It doesn't phase you anymore. You're just there. You're playing flesh and blood, and you're doing the best you can, looking to become Indianapolis calling champion.
And I mean, the best you can, and for one of these players, is going to be a champion of the calling, and that is a huge achievement. And Michael's been there; he's played on camera, he's won one, but Pheano has basically dumpstered this entire field. So this is just another obstacle on the road to victory, and they're both looking pretty comfortable, as it were.
No, I think so. I think both players just finding their groove now, and Pheano's groove involves more and more spectral shields as time goes on. Haze bending going to contribute to that plan. We know those spectral shields are lurking, ready to contribute to that plan. Is going to be a pitch here of Michael Hamilton of Spinal Crush. So that will eventually find its way to the bottom of the library, possibly playing a role in the late game. But Crown of Seed's going to go ahead and prevent a little damage here from these auras.
Michael Hamilton here, hoping to find another big play, finding the hotness, as it were, a second haze bending. That is a back-breaking, addition to the aura pool.
Yeah, this is kind of like where it gets interesting about the Genesis decision. I still think it was correct, but haze bending in multiples is problematic. Now you know those spectral shields are going to get really wide, and this is the point where Pheano can start pushing damage. You find something like a Shimmers, and the damage output just gets exponentially scaling, and the game could slip away from Michael. So let's see what the cleanup is here. Every time Pheano's gotten a little wide, Michael has had the answer, has had to lead the charge. Haven't seen Blink yet. We saw Time Skippers early on. So is there another answer from Michael? Can you find a way to clean up these haze bendings? And are you prepared for the fact that even if you clean them up, there's going to be an answer left behind because of these spectral shield tokens?
So I believe I see, is that there's an unmovable. I see another herald. And is that a miraging metamorph, I think, that's floating around in there as well for Pheano?
It could be a metamorph, or it could be that spectral shield I mentioned. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, prismatic shield could be something. He does have 3 in the deck, so he might be holding on to that. And again, we've seen 2 merciful retributions already off the board. So like we mentioned late game, if you can sneak one of those in with a board full of spectral shields, it gets gross.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Only 1 copy left, but if Pheano finds it at the right time, it's going to leave Michael Hamilton actually without outs. There's just something... There's nothing you can do in some scenarios.
Hydration, super important. Pheano just grabbing some water there to keep himself just hydrated and focused. But again, that cool, calm demeanor has got him this far, and I don't think it's going to change. But you can see a little bit more of the breathing. You know, you can see that he's just staring down his opponent. This is a board that he is so happy to have at this life total juncture right here. And Michael Hamilton is looking through his cards to find out what is the best course of action here. Because 2 haze bendings can leave a lot of garbage when the smoke clears.
Absolutely right, Flake. And speaking of cool, calm, collected, if you notice, we've kind of toned down a bit.
Yes, we have.
Hall is emptying out. we want to make sure the players don't hear us. Trust me, I'm every bit excited as you are, viewer. I promise you. Just want to make sure we preserve competitive integrity, don't leak any information, and let these players play the calling finals that they deserve to play.
It would have been possible, even if Tannen was here, that the players could see him.
Yeah, jumping up and down behind us.
That's correct.
Absolutely right.
All right, so trust us. We are both just bursting at the seams of excitement and just pure suspense here, but we do have to respect the fact that we do not want to convey any information to these players. We want this game to go the way it's meant to be, which is player on player. The cards are going to dictate how this goes through. And as it stands now, Winter's Bite has been played. That's going to force Pheano to have to pay or discard. So he's just... Usually, 99% of the time, you're just paying here, floating some resource if necessary. We've seen it in the past where you pitch and you'll get some extra, you can use the remaining float to create a Spectral Shield out of Soul. But right now, Prism doesn't have that. So maybe he gets rid of the Unmovable here.
Yeah, that's an option. We also could, if we have a blue, pitch and then have unmovable resources left over. So there's a few choices we can make here. And you're going to see 2 floating here from Pheano.
So 2 float, that does mean perhaps you pitch another yellow, and then you can sneak out an aura if necessary.
Absolutely.
All right, so that is the first salvo of this turn for Michael Hamilton. Winter's Bite, there was no fusion of Starvo, so there's either a bunch of lightning or a bunch of earth in there, or maybe it's just a bunch of guardian attacks. But I feel like if it was guardian attacks, he would have probably gone for it. So here he comes with the hammer at haze bending, and we're about to see why 2 haze bendings can be gross.
Yeah, Spectral Shield heading up to 4 now, really getting onto the battlefield for Pheano. And it's time to bring up that old talking point, Flake. Stalagmite on Michael Hamilton's side. Chilling there. We've basically seen Michael turn to Stalagmite in every matchup. It's rare that he heads to Rampart of the Ram's Head. And I spent all weekend being convinced that I was wrong for relying too much on Stalagmite. But you see the way Michael has built his deck. You see the way he plays. You see the immense value he's gotten out of those Stalagmites in endgame situations. That's what he saves them for. He saves them for when the chips are down, when it really matters, when he's got to seize back the initiative. Michael finds a way, usually through that Stalagmite. But speaking of season initiative, here's a big play from Pheano Black.
Yeah, that is the prismatic shield that we were talking about. And the whole debate about Stalagmite comes from the fact that a lot of people just put it at face value. If it's blocks 3, creates 2 frostbites. But when you're facing down a board by Pheano Black, in this case, where he's going to have go again for free swings on all of these, stuffing the first spectral shield that comes in for 1 with the Stalagmite is not just blocking the 1. It's blocking all the subsequent auras that would have attacked you that he can no longer afford to do so. So it's not a block of 1. It's a block of, in this case, potentially 8 or more. So that's what he's doing. So good call on that one, Brian. Again, the debate still rages on. Ram's Head over Stalagmite. I love Stalagmite.
Both have their place for sure. It's all about player style, deck building. That Frostbite is going to come out. So if we're going to do any more attacking here, we're going to have to pay. Instead, Pheano chooses to take the Arsenal. Had the option to go ahead and pay through that Frostbite. Doesn't want to. Thinks the next turn is more important. And that tells you there could be big things headed in Michael Hamilton's way.
If that's a merciful retribution that's in that arsenal, then that could be very dangerous.
Yeah,
but
scary for sure.
Michael Hamilton doing his own scary moves here. All right, Earth, Lightning, Ice.
Big time for that.
Yeah, definitely. Starvo is certainly the star of the show, front row center over here. He's going to be adding a lot of extra throttle to this move that Michael Hamilton's going to be making. I believe that was a red Earth card, if I'm not mistaken.
Break ground does look like a red to me, so that's going to be particularly large, getting that boost from the Starvo. And, we talk about these blank attacks, as we call them, just doing damage. They're not blank when they're being played into Prism, though, because if that cleans up Spectral Shields, that's a really big deal.
So in this case, again, there's the Immovable. So that's what he ended up dunking into the arsenal there to go ahead and stuff this. And I like this play. Again, vanilla damage doesn't necessarily mean much, but what this means in this case is you're blocking. So that Unmovable, which hit the board. Pierce Reality was pitched there. Unmovable hits the board to block this out. And this does 2 things. It's not only soaking damage, but it's also maintaining 7 spectral shields on the board. And that is huge.
Yeah, big time for that Unmovable. Again, another one of these scenarios where players are firing their best shots at each other, and the answer is there. That's why I love this metagame so much, Flake. I think these games come down to so many back and forth situations, so many huge swings of momentum. I mean, there hasn't been a bad game all day. Every single one is just breathtaking, interesting, and comes down to the wire. And we're seeing another classic here in the finals.
Playing the Winter's Bite after the Starvo effect is buying a card out of Pheano Black's hand, and I think that if you're going to be attacking, you know, you're likely just going to be able to soak some of it off of the Spectral Shield or whatnot. In this case, this guarantees that you're getting a card out of hand, and I think that's what Michael Hamilton's looking to do here, is this to limit the follow-up turn. Keep in mind here, Brian, there is no soul. You know, Prism is just running on empty here, so you cannot just generate a Spectral Shield and go nuts, but there's another. Oh my gosh. So we are at 8. Again, Haze bending, leaving some stuff to be desired.
Look at this follow-up. Ode to Wrath coming down from Pheano Black. And you know when you really don't want to see an Ode to Wrath? When there's 8 Spectral Shields out there.
Now, the beautiful part about this is he's only getting 1 attack. So at the very least, Michael will have a very clean, clear chance to go ahead and respond before this gets out of hand. Now, 8 Spectral Shields plus the Ode to Wrath, that is 9 damage on hit 18. And that is too much for Michael to handle. So
yeah, and look at when this came, Flake. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's such an important juncture here. No arsenal for Michael, so this shouldn't be a high-power turn. But as I say that, Bravo Star of the Show reveals 3 cards, and that means possibly a red Autumn's Touch going to get powered up and take out those Spectral Shields.
Oh, hold on a second.
Never mind, even better.
Who needs an arsenal when you have a double fused Oakenold? So this is coming in as 11 Dominate Go Again. But there are 8 Spectral Shields. But I don't think the on-hit is what Michael Hamilton is worried about.
No, this is about damage, Flake. This is about cleaning up those Spectral Shields. And again, another situation where Pheano looked like he was starting to wrestle control, and Michael Hamilton just has the perfect answer.
Yeah, he's coming in with the Hoover on this one. He wants full-on vacuum cleaner power. There's 8 Spectral Shields that, again, Oakenold connecting doesn't matter. And I don't even think Michael Hamilton's going to be too weary about if Pheano Black can sneak in a merciful retribution here. It would be painful, don't get me wrong, but I think the thing that Michael is most concerned about is having a board that is this wide, especially with an Ode to Wrath on board. But we can guarantee that there's going to be a follow-up of Hammer into Ode to Wrath, because there's no reason Michael should let all of those auras get double the value.
Yeah, and that's going to bring Michael right back to where he's comfortable living, in that empty aura zone.
And no soul, still no soul. Pheano has done so much work to make this happen. He's just going to go ahead, throw one of the heralds out into the abyss, and you could see how desperately he's trying to protect that board. He's blocking for 5. There's going to be of 11, so that's 6 that comes through. And Michael Hamilton has done a great job of just giving that board quite the restructuring.
Pheano holding on to whatever offense can possibly get, but it's not much. It's 2 Spectral Shields and just an absolute haymaker of a turn from Michael Hamilton. As we proceed toward the end of this calling, things get just tighter and tighter and tighter every single turn. Both players extracting maximum value from every single turn. And here you see Wartune Herald coming down for Pheano.
Yeah, that is some aggression as necessary. It's only the blue, so it's coming in for 5. No big deal. But the important element here is the fact that you're pitching yellow. You have your footsteps if necessary. It's 5 damage is 5 damage. The most important aspect that Pheano wants to do here is just start loading up that soul. He needs to be able to find an outlet to pitch yellow to gain go again on his auras. So in this case, 5 on hit doesn't seem too scary, but the on hit does open up future turns and future potential here. And it's going to be that 5 points and 2 more Spectral Shields that, again, will potentially tickle some damage.
Yeah, we are going to see Hamilton go ahead and deploy Glacial Footsteps, trying to go ahead and break that Herald. Does so, but resources are paid into the Phantasmal Footsteps. That's going to go ahead and allow these Spectral Shields to come in for 2 damage.
One more charge on Stalagmite is an important element, like we saw. It could really factor in late game. That extra Frostbite can be dangerous, but still, you still have the gloves. And I'm thinking that there is definitely a Herald out there that he is concerned about, that those gloves are waiting to catch.
I think you're exactly right. Herald of Erudition, sort of the Game Breaker Herald. It's the one that hits different from all the other ones. Speaking of Game Breakers, here's a pretty nice swing from Michael. It's not the ultimate Oakenolds that we've seen in the past, but it's an efficient Oakenold.
Yeah. This is a flesh and blood like Grandma used to play. It's just pitch and throw damage, right? And there's no fusion, none of this nonsense. There's no on-hit effects. It's just here 7, have fun. And it's an awkward block. But again, Michael Hamilton's strategy here, I feel, is just to clean up those spectral shields.
You're exactly right. Force some damage through. Either going to take a bunch of cards out of Pheano's hand or going to challenge those spectral shields. Either one pretty acceptable for Michael. Looking for a little bit of clarity here from the judge. Going to check in on some stuff.
That judge, that's Amanda. She's a level 2 head judge here, and she's been doing an exceptional job of keeping all of these games on the rails. So thank you to Amanda, who's done an excellent job judging, as well as, you know, just the entire team this weekend has been spot on.
Phenomenal judge crew. Not only doing the job of, you know, going ahead and judging these matches, but keeping us informed, keeping us in the loop, getting us the deck sheets we need to bring you this coverage, getting us all the information we have to have. I can't say enough good things about the judge staff here at the call-in.
All right, so there's 4 cards that are just on the board there. I think while the judges are essentially just sort of, you know, parsing through what the concern is here. And again, this is the finals, Brian, so you have to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. Any point of confusion that you misinterpret can lead to a very, very difficult situation here. All right, so at the moment, I think, Brian, there's just a few things that they're just sorting out, which is fine. But at this juncture in the game, you'd think that typically the Starvo player would have been super aggressive. Typically, the Prism player will be in the teens by this point, while the Starvo player is in the high 20s, low 30s. But that's not the case in this, because Michael Hamilton plays it differently.
Yes, slow and steady. Just go ahead, control those auras, and Michael Hamilton has done a bang-up job at doing so thus far. But you got to push damage. You got to find a way through. Otherwise, Pheano's just going to find some window. And we've seen it be so close. Got really wide with those spectral shields at one point, but Hamilton had the perfect answer to come back with. At the same time, Hamilton, when he found some offense, it was the D-reacts out of Arsenal from Pheano. So all these haymakers being thrown, neither player really finding purchase, just trading small bits of life and keeping us at parity.
All right, we're going back to the action now as everything's been resolved, and it's still a 7-attack Oakenol. 2 spectral shields still sitting there. And looking at the hand, I do see a sink below in Pheano's hand.
Sink below, potentially able to protect those spectral shields in combination with another card. That would still leave Pheano with a pretty decent comeback. Should he have some way to potentially pitch a yellow, you'll be able to force a little bit more damage.
I think Michael might be just examining, okay, how many of those D-React Steel Keys? There's, okay, 1 unmovable, 2 unmovables. I've seen 2. I think so. He's like, is that what's in Arsenal? And maybe Pheano, maybe Michael is suggesting in this case, it's like, okay, if that isn't unmovable, does he want to use it here? Because there's no on-hit effect. How much does he value 2 little measly tokens?
Yeah, and that's what the game's all about. Finding out when you can best utilize your resources. Figuring out, is this something I need to protect? Is it something I can wait on? Is it time for these D-reacts to go ahead and keep some momentum on my side of the battlefield?
And this is that important juncture what you're talking about, where the fact that Michael Hamilton sat there and studied this sheet. So when you're going through that graveyard, and again, he's looking at his zone saying, what do I have left? So as it stands now, studying the deck list, studying your opponent's deck sheet, and then going through that graveyard, that can be very important to just know what's coming down the pipe.
No, you're exactly right, and that's exactly what we saw Hamilton doing. So instead of trying to protect these spectral shields, it looks like we're just going to go ahead and bring down a Parable of Humility from Michael Hamilton, or excuse me, from Pheano Black.
So Parable of Humility is in one of those, again, those 4 drops auras at instant speed that will essentially give each one of those attacks a 1-point haircut. So that is now a 6-attack Oakenol, but still good enough to not just push some tempo, but also clean up that aura. And look at this, man.
Just ready. At the ready is Michael Hamilton. Oh, he's going to drop a blink, has the pitch for the hammer, and cleans up that Parable of Humility instantly.
So Pheano now at 18, Michael Hamilton at 20. But what's important here was that it was a clean board. It was back to square one as both players were basically starting over. Now, here we go. He's going to go ahead and drop the shimmers, but Michael Hamilton also wants to just make sure that there's no trickery here with the Crown of Reflection. The Crown of Reflection can only be used on your action phase, but it is an instant. It's another way, if you have a Spectral Shield on the board, to trade up that Spectral Shield, basically upgrade it, turn that Charmander into a Charizard, so to speak, and turn a Spectral Shield into a Shimmers, into a Haze Bending, and it's still there, and it's still can be done. But now Michael Hamilton is finally clapping back.
Yeah, speaking of upgrades, now it's time for this Autumn's Touch to get upgraded a little bit. I believe Blue, would you agree with me there, Flake?
I think so.
Okay. Now, Michael Hamilton, of course, leaning very hard on yellow Autumn's Touch as well, so it's possible that's what we're looking at. Does have 3 copies of yellow in the deck. Loves these Autumn's Touch. Again, 9 copies of Autumn's Touch. You want to guess why that's the case, Flake? I'll tell you. 3 block. That's what it's all about. 3 block. Michael Hamilton is looking for it every single chance he can get.
That is absolutely true. We've seen just how his demeanor has been and his stance in terms of what's important. And in his mind, 3 block is so key. It is a critical aspect. And in those mirrors, like you mentioned, blocking out a hammer with a 3 block and a crown does save the day. So this is only a 7 attack. So it was a blue Autumn's Touch that comes in with the Starvo ability, bringing it up to 7. And it's just going to get blocked with 3, no problem. Some of that damage is going to leak in. And once again, Michael Hamilton going to work.
I mean, Bravo is not a deck that is supposed to go again every single turn, but Michael Hamilton always has it. Such a well-built deck. The lead, the charges are there, the blinks are there, the Bravo activations are there, and just cleaning up these auras time after time. But Pheano going to go ahead and look to get a little wide again. 3 auras being made on the back of that prismatic shield.
No soul again, and giving up a big piece like Erudition here. I think Pheano's just saying, okay, you haven't even used your gloves. You have so much going on here that this Erudition is essentially punchless. So nice move here by the Stalagmite. I think Michael might have another big turn coming up.
Quite possible. Going to go ahead and deploy those resources. Pheano going to pay for the Frostbite this time. That is going to cost Arsenal on the next turn. Also, Janai's possibly playing the Shimmers. So I think, again, Michael has identified the spot where it was time to go ahead and use that Stalagmite. Just has like a 6th sense for when is this going to be most punishing for my opponent.
That's reps. That's reps. That's experience. That's being in this position multiple times. It's practicing this exact scenario and knowing exactly without too much hesitation as to how to approach this situation. And that's exactly what he has done. And in this case, I mean, Pheano has done everything necessary to establish an aura game. Unfortunately, that's his 2nd prismatic shield I believe he played, so 3 more spectral shields on the board, but those are just going to get gobbled up. Michael Hamilton is going to play Pac-Man on those spectral shields following up over here and just absolutely devour them, as he has been doing for turn after turn after turn.
Yeah, ticks up that tunic. Going to go ahead and deploy Spinal Crush. A big salvo from Michael Hamilton here, looking to push some real damage Pheano's Black's way. And look, again, Pheano finally establishes some battlefield presence, gets some spectral shields out there, tries to start some offense, and Michael says, yeah, I just have another huge attack. I have exactly what I need to clean up these spectral shields, unless you want to give me your entire hand.
And in this case, again, I don't think he's even that worried if there's a block coming through. The Crush effect in this case for Spinal Crush being the fact that if you deal 4 or more damage, it will have the effect of that Crush, which is limiting Go again. But ultimately, I think that the name of the game here is this: he's trying to be happy with just gobbling up those spectral shields. But another big stuff, that is the 3rd unmovable.
Unreal how the back and forth has gone every single time. It's like, okay, this person has exactly what they need in this turn. The other person has exactly what they need to answer it.
So no more cards in hand. Or there's 1 more card in hand, I should say, from Pheano Black. But if you do go ahead and pop the Phantasm on this Miraging Metamorph, you're cloning a Spectral Shield, and I think that is a fair trade for the damage that you might pick up, and that 1 resource that could potentially be used with the Phantasmal Footsteps to recover the action point means that there's nothing left in your hand. So we'll see what happens here. There's a Crown of Reflection again, another peek at Crown of Reflection here, and this might be a situation where perhaps Pheano Black decides to go ahead and make that trade up.
I think so. I think the time has come where you want to get something here. So it is going to be Glacial Footsteps popping that Metamorph. Let's see what it does.
So he's recovering the action point. That's no problem here. He's going to go ahead and clone one of those Spectral Shields, so he's back up to 3. And that's okay. And I think that's a trade-up that Michael Hamilton is okay to take. He's going to be taking 3 instances of 1 here, and there's still 1 more card in Pheano's hand. And is it an Arsenal card, or is it a blue aura?
Looks like it's an Arsenal card, and that's going to go ahead, pop in there, and Pheano going to head into the next turn with a pretty full grip.
I think that Michael Hamilton got off on that turn a way ahead than he thought he would be.
Yeah, and this is a good way to keep the pressure up. Oaken Old fused, coming in for a big 9. Not the biggest possible output for the Oaken Old. We've seen the 11.1s, but 9 is pretty damn good, and that's going to put Pheano in the grinder now as he makes a decision, tries to preserve some of these Spectral Shields. Is there a defense react in hand for Pheano? We know the unmovables are gone. Are there Soul Shields left? I don't think so. I don't see a D-react here.
There's, unless the, I mean, whatever's in the pocket there could be another sink below, but there's no more unmovables, and those are the clutch ones here. And look at them. They're basically saying, all right, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. They're just going through each other's, doing the study thing again. And look, there's 1 unmovable. Keep going through. You're going to see the second unmovable. There's the third. So Michael Hamilton knows that there's no more party tricks that he needs to worry about here, as that Oaken Old as a 9 dominate is going to get some significant value here.
Really tough decision for Pheano here to decide what he wants to commit to defense, both preserving life total, preserving cards in hand. If you're trying to preserve your hand, you're pretty much committed to a full block here. If you're trying to preserve Spectral Shields, you're pretty much committed to a full block here.
It is dominated, though. So full block is going to be difficult to pull off. Unless that's a sink below that's in the arsenal, you could potentially go ahead, drop a 3 and a 3 block, and then the 4, and then you're keeping 1 Spectral Shield on the board. Maybe that's okay. At this rate, I think Pheano's just saying, all right, as long as I don't buy the whole, he doesn't buy my whole hand, we're okay. But that is under the assumption that that pocketed card in the arsenal is a 4 block defense reaction.
No, you're exactly right, Flake. And I'm so used to these Oaken Olds being charged up with Bravo. When it's not, I'm like, oh, Dominate must not be part of the card. It is. Oaken Old is that good. It's absolutely preposterous.
It's built right in. Okay, so
we do have the Soul Shield, a clutch Soul Shield from Pheano here. Going to prevent that damage, keep those Spectral Shields on board. Again, a huge salvo from Michael Hamilton. Pheano has the answer.
There is no go again here. Because it wasn't a Starvo fuse, but at the very least, we are again buying resources. Again, keep track here: 3 Soul Shields, 3 Unmovables, 3 Sink Belows. 9 of these D-Reacts are floating around, and Michael Hamilton is saying, okay, come on, just one time don't have it. One time don't have it.
Pheano's saying the exact same thing, though. Michael Hamilton has just had the response he needed in every situation, and I think you're seeing exactly why players have come to appreciate this metagame. Are there 2 top decks? Absolutely. Are we seeing them battle in the finals of the Calling Indianapolis? Absolutely. Are these games incredible? Also, absolutely.
Absolutely. Here's a little update on my pen. It is now in 19 pieces.
Shreds. I don't even know what Flake is doing to this pen at this point.
To shreds, you say. Absolutely. And looking at Michael Hamilton's grip here, we see Channel Lake Frigid. There's some earth in there. If you hunt some lightning, that could really do a number on those Spectral Shields once again.
Yeah, but Hamilton is going to go ahead and eat some damage here, and that's where the trouble starts.
All right, passing Mirage. That is a nice way to protect that first Illusionist attack, and both players have been there, done that. So for those who are unaware, the first Illusionist attack could potentially be one of those Spectral Shields, but you want to use that Phantasm protection on one of those Heralds. In this case, there it is, flashing the hotness.
Yeah, and Autumn's Touch going to be paid for by that Lightning Surge, going to come in for 9 Dominate. That is going to put a hurting on those Spectral Shields, unless another copy of Soul Shield, but I don't think we have it this time. I think this one's getting off for Michael Hamilton.
And Michael Hamilton is finally saying, all right, okay, there's a Genesis.
Finally.
There's a Genesis.
Finally.
Erudition in hand, Genesis in hand. I don't see a Soul Shield, and there's no more Unmovables. No red cards, I believe, that are in there. It's just 4 yellows, so there's no Sink Belows. I think I saw a War Tune in there, if I'm not mistaken. So right now, Pheano's saying, okay, it's vanilla damage. How important is this? If I can come back with an Erudition, but ultimately the Erudition is going to get stuffed potentially by one of those the gloves. So there is so many situations here where Pheano has just been really just racking his brain. How can I establish an aura game? But like you mentioned, Michael Hamilton has been approaching this matchup from a different angle.
Built different. Michael Hamilton, both
Um,
in deck and play.
I think now he's counting the soul shields. He might just be saying, all right, do you have this one too? Come on. So 9 dominate is what's going on right now. The fusion of the Starvo ability means that that 9 dominate go again is the first. That is the main course, but dessert's right around the corner with a frosty hammer.
Here's what I'm thinking is going on here. Pheano's thinking about just eating this damage. I mean, this decision isn't that hard if you're trying to find your best block. If you're like, can I actually afford to take this 9, give up these spectral shields, take 5? And I think that's exactly what's happening. Pheano just says, I can afford to take this hit. And that must mean what he's coming back with is pretty good. We're going to have to see how Michael Hamilton wants to disrupt that. This is another interesting spot, Flake. If I had an ice card here for my Winter's Wail, which Hamilton does, or can deploy that Channel Lake Frigid, which I think is another valid option. But it feels like this is the moment where you're supposed to go face, where you're supposed to go ahead and let that passing Mirage sit out there on the battlefield. But no, Michael Hamilton, of course, proving me wrong, going after passing Mirage once again. He plays one way. He controls these auras. That's what the game plan is all about.
Built different, so he's going to go ahead and cheat out a Genesis. Once the coast is clear, there's no more action points to be had. Genesis is on the board. Pitching those Heralds again, but this is a clutch piece here because the other card in hand is a Light Illusionist card, so at the start of the turn, he's going to go ahead and load the Soul.
Yep.
I think this is like... There hasn't been many cards in Soul. There's been a Soul Shield in there, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So that is a nice way to start establishing some jam here as the Genesis creates a card draw and a Spectral Shield, and now we can get naughty.
Yeah, just that one Spectral Shield going to be moving in. I'd assume this is it. I think there's a good chance Pheano wants to Arsenal and try and build something heading into the next turn. But every time I assume something, these masterful players prove me wrong. So let's just go ahead and see what Pheano does here.
Yeah, let them dictate the pace here, dictate the play. That die on the board, the 9, that is from a turn ago, so that is insignificant. We don't need to look at that. What we need to look at, frankly, is the fact that Pheano has a Genesis on board for the first time in a long time, and he's going to go ahead and create another Spectral Shield. So again, build up that aura game. It seems like every time Michael Hamilton just, pulls the rug under that aura plan, the table just gets reset immediately.
Back and forth, just over and over. It's exactly what this game is about.
This game has gone on for over 50 minutes, which is typically what a classic constructed game would go to. In the finals, however, in the top 8, there is no time limit. We want these games to be resolved the way that they should be, with one player coming out on top, as both players here have really put the work in to really keep those life totals so uniform. 9 to 10, it's been this back and forth, like you mentioned, tug of war on both sides. There's the lead the charge. That means the deck has recycled.
Yeah, there we go again. Lead the charge, ready to go ahead and control these auras. I think your knowledge that this deck has been recycled is very good. I'd expect cards to get, on average, worse for Michael Hamilton, although there were some very, I would call, astute pitches early on in the game. I remember a Spinal Crush that was given to the pitch. There's big hits left. You just got to find the right moments for him. And I don't even know if Michael Hamilton cares about big hits. As long as he's out there controlling these auras, plinking, making those small attacks, I think he's in his zone and happy.
This game has been a chess match, absolutely. And it has not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's unorthodox, the approach here, but Michael Hamilton has basically taken a different route to that same endgame of controlling auras. He's been very patient, which a lot of Starvo players typically like to just eat damage to swing face. Michael Hamilton does not want that to happen. He wants to be able to go ahead and do what he's got to do. So there's the block, protecting some of the Spectral Shields that are on the board. And again, Pheano doing a really good job of protecting that board presence.
Yeah, trying desperately to cling to those sources of damage. Those faux Kodachis, if you will.
Fodachis.
At some point, we'll see a real Kodachi down there in the feature match area again. There was one this weekend.
There was. I got to cast a old school, well, I say old school Kansu. Kansu versus old school Bravo. So Bravo Showstopper. And what's amazing about that is the player who played Showstopper, is a gentleman named Clark, came to talk to me afterwards. And he had no idea that I casted his match. And I went to talk to him. I'm like, hey, man, that was awesome. And the whole pummel strategy was really exciting to see. There's the Parable of Humility. Again, there's another aura. And if you're keeping track, I mean, eventually you'd think that Pheano would just run out of these, but he's just pulling them out of thin air.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is rich with auras, right? A large percentage of the deck is comprised of just these things that generate battlefield presence. A unique approach to Flesh and Blood. No other deck plays like Prism. I love it, though. I think it's so unique and now captures the flavor of Illusionist so well. But look what we have developing over on Michael's side. It looks like we have found our 3 elements again, and it's that Pulse of Candlehold.
That's the yellow one. That's the one that'll go ahead and put more attacks on top of your deck. So there's a little bit of late game, potential damage if necessary. So that is always there.
Yeah, and look at this. Michael is spending it. Going to go ahead and load those Oaken Olds to the top of the deck. Wants to have access to them.
I love that play. And in this case, well, we're still got to go ahead. Fusing Starvo is one thing, but you don't necessarily have the jam here.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, there's an arsenal. And that means if he wants to go ahead and activate Crown of Seeds on the turn, you can go ahead and get a fresh card and draw one of those Oaken Olds, leverage the Bravo ability, and go right after Pheano here.
That's true. This might be that juncture of the game where perhaps the player, the Starvo player, has to just give up on the aura cleaning and go right back to face. Just get straight at the life total. Start attacking what matters most. He's done so much work in cleaning up auras over time, and at this point...
Here it is, Flake. Crown of Seeds going to go ahead and draw that top card off the deck. That's an Oaken Old.
Wonderful play, impressive play the whole way through. You gotta love it. And with the tunic means that's coming in for free.
Oh, and guess what? It's fused up too. That is the biggest Oaken Old imaginable. That's going to go ahead and push through for 11 dominate.
Michael Hamilton, you glorious bastard. That was amazing play. What a masterful move there.
Perfect patience, just incredible patience. And you know what? There's an Oaken Old coming on the next turn too. And this is the moment. This is the moment where Michael Hamilton looks to stake a claim, possibly carve out that second calling championship for himself.
That was so masterful again. This is why Michael Hamilton is here, because of these types of plays, playing the patience game and just using that Pulse of Candlehold to load up the card, get that Crown of Seeds activation, and having everything line up absolutely flawlessly. In conjunction with the tunic, you were able to play it and fuse it. Incredible.
Breathtaking play from Michael Hamilton. Really, there's no other way to describe it. It's just so perfect, so clean. And now Pheano has to find a response. Do we have the D-React again? I think I saw the Soul Shield. Absolutely, it's the Soul Shield pulled to the front. So there is a good block available. Not a great block. I mean, there's just no possibility of a great block here.
The issue is that with the Dominate, he would have rather had that Soul Shield, obviously, in Arsenal.
Oh,
that way
100%.
You could have stuffed this all the way through, but this has got to feel good if you're Michael Hamilton. That's 1, 2, 6. That means 8 plus the 2. There's no on-hit here, but you bought a Tunic, and you bought some Footsteps.
Yeah, huge, huge value here for Michael. Going to clear out so many pieces of equipment. It's not the most valuable Oaken Old you can get, but it's real close. And then finally, that Winner's Wail, guess what it's going to do? It's going to clean out those auras one more time. Parable of Humility. Going to hit the bin. And Michael Hamilton, I would say now firmly in the driver's seat. Going to draw an Oaken Old, we know, and try and set up for one more big turn that could be the straw that finally breaks Pheano Black's back.
So like you mentioned, the way that was stacked, again, the Pulse of the Candlehold, putting the 2 Oaken Olds on top means that is one of the things that he's drawing, but he does need some more pieces to make this happen. All right, I believe that's a blue Herald. Pitching a blue for this, no go again, but there wasn't really an option to. However, with the 2 float, you can go ahead and use that resource if you want to with Prism to create another Spectral Shield by banishing that Soul Shield out of the Soul.
Yeah, I think that Oaken Old is now sitting in the arsenal for Michael. Is there an Elemental Fusion available in hand? Is that Bravo going to go ahead and again instill a massive attack? Because if so, you could see Michael Hamilton just go ahead and take this damage, which is incredible being at 7. But if the setup is that good, we just might see it here.
I got to say, after watching Pheano play this, I can see why he absolutely posterized the rest of the field.
No question.
Let's be real. It takes a Michael Hamilton to sort of pump the brakes on this runaway freight train that Pheano has been riding. But you could see just the constant pressure, despite the fact that Michael has been stopping him every time. He is constantly putting pressure on Michael. And Pheano has really established himself as a premier player of just masterful player of patience and constant pressure. He has shown that Prism is real. It is a power player here, but Michael Hamilton has been kind of playing that Starvo list from a different angle.
Yeah, Michael going to go ahead and clear out the arsenal here. So That may be... No, Oakenolt's still in hand. Okay, so was able to save that. Must have misread the arsenal there. That means we're going to go ahead, deploy Pulse here for +4 on the next elemental attack. That's going to be bolstering the Winter's Wail. No, it's going to be bolstering the Oakenold, just looking for as much damage as possible. Going to go ahead and push 11 Pheano Black's way.
And again, the objective here obviously is pressure, buy cards out of hand, but clean up that damn Spectral Shield. He doesn't want to see anything. Michael Hamilton's apartment must be absolutely spotless. Nothing left on the ground in any way, shape, or form. He has to be just happy to see that his game plan is coming to fruition. And it took a while to get here. We're just about to cross the 1 hour mark of this match, and he is still doing what he's doing. He is committed to the game plan, and it is really paying off here. That's 11 on that attack. No on-hit, no fuse, no nothing. But hey, man, 11 is 11.
Flake, you reach a point where it's only the numbers that matter, and it's when these life totals get real low. If you can make them big enough, that's all that's going to matter in the end of the game.
So here he comes. 11 on the hook. Pheano is just parsing out what that defense is going to look like. There's no dominate, so he can't give up his hand, but this is a dangerous spot as well because Prism has a lot of cards that block for nothing. A lot of those instant speed cards that are going to be basically just pitch fodder, and with nothing in soul, you can't create any spectral shields. That Crown of Reflection blocks for nothing, and that's exactly what the case was. There wasn't a whole lot going on. There were 2 cards in hand that blocked for nothing.
Yeah, and had to deploy a Parable of Humility to just hang on by inches here. Gonna go ahead and make a block is Pheano.
So Pheano should be down to 3 now. A 6, I believe, has snuck through, but that's the whole hand as well. It is at that juncture. All he can do now is just show that the Parable of Humility is on the board, and he just pushes it forward, say, all right, I'll take 1, I guess. But Michael Hamilton, before he makes a commitment here, he's going to see if it's, you know, if the hand is such that he can afford to toss 1 in there and just kind of, you know, block that out because it doesn't matter, the card doesn't matter, he will do so. But he's valuing this hand as it's now 3 to 6, 6 for Michael Hamilton, and the hand he has, he might like. There's that Spinal Crush you mentioned.
Yeah, finally coming back around. And again, big numbers are all that matter at this moment. Going to go ahead and deploy the Spinal Crush. Massive attack for 8. Parable of Humility doing a little bit to blunt that.
I will say this, like you mentioned, the poise of these players is important. I have played in, you know, in tournaments, in ProQuests, etc., where the player across from me was maybe new, and when the stakes were high, you see a little bit of that handshake, you see a little bit of that uneasiness. In this case, both players are absolutely stoic. They have been here before. They are ready for this. They do not get intimidated by the cameras. However many of you are out there in Twitch land watching this, they don't care. What matters to them is whoever's across the table and the cards on the board, and it shows. There's no jostling, no tilt, it's just pure poise the whole way through.
And look at this massive black block being lined up by Pheano Black. He's going to throw 3 cards in front of the Spinal Crush, trying to just preserve whatever life total he can, because there's no defensive resources really left for Pheano. There's no equipment on that side. Most of the D-reacts are burned at this point, and Pheano just hanging on by a thread, trying to find some way to push through points of damage against Michael Hamilton. But Michael Hamilton firmly in the driver's seat right now. That Crater Fist still has not had to make a block. You can still cash in that Tunic, but it's going to offer another resource on the next turn. Crown of Seeds still ready to do its thing. It's just about finding that last fusion for Michael Hamilton and pushing through some dominate damage, and we could have a champion here at the Calling Indianapolis.
This is the first flare that's fired off when you're
Here's
saying
a fusion.
Yeah, we're calling the SOS. Is that a red evergreen?
I believe it is, and that's going to represent 9 dominate from Michael Hamilton. Demands an answer on the part of Pheano Black.
I think there might be a last Prismatic Shield, unless that's a Miraging Metamorph, but that's 8 dominate with the Parable of Humility. So there's a little bit of silver lining here. You can block out with a 3. Is there a Prismatic Shield that you can throw at this as well? This is dangerous here.
Because there's also Go Again here, Flake, and if there's more resources available, that Winter's Wail could come in and clean up this game if there's not an effective block available.
It comes down to this, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Fused Starvo on 3 life. Pheano Black needs to defend that life total with every inch of his being at this point, scratching and clawing. Michael Hamilton has really put in the work to win this game, and he's so close. He is so close, but Pheano Black is no slouch when it comes to these situations. Like you mentioned, Brian, he has been chewing up Starvos and spitting him out. This is a situation I'm sure he's faced a bunch of times.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see Pheano Black fall to 1 here. Going to go ahead and make those prismatic shields. Get a little bit of protection from Spectral Shield. That means going to take 2 damage, fall down to 1.
And there's that powerful Bull of Humility saving the day for at least one more turn.
Absolutely, and what's the follow-up here from Michael Hamilton?
I mean, you got to go and face here, right? I mean, the only saving grace is if Pheano Black has anything else.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Oh, no. Yeah, a timely Winter's Bite buys the hand, and he's just
yeah, and that is going to do it. Winner's Wail does the last points of damage, and we have our champion. Michael Hamilton takes down the Calling Indianapolis, and you see a massive sigh of relief on his part. What a well-played game from Michael Hamilton. Have we ever seen a more deserving 2-time Calling champion?
That was incredible, and I will say this is the pen, ladies and gentlemen. It is now dust.
Shreds.
It is
what is this? Like, what have you done to this terrible
It's
pen?
a lot of this, and now we could actually speak at the volume that we want to speak through the entire time, because that matchup was absolutely suspenseful, and you could see that both players knew what they were doing from the get-go, and there was a lot of poise, a lot of patience on both sides here, as at every juncture you had Pheano Black that was just establishing that aura plan, just dumping as many on the board and continuing to pressure. And Michael Hamilton, with so much patience, is just going through there with his vacuum cleaner, just zamboning the entire field and getting rid of all those auras. Brian, what a finals.
I mean, I can't say enough good things about Michael Hamilton's play. And I want to say exactly the same about Pheano Black. Just looked masterful as a Prism player all day long. Played so patiently, so perfectly. Absolutely would have been a deserving Calling champion. Someone's got to finish first. Someone's got to finish second. And Michael Hamilton now a 2-time Calling champion.
Yeah, not many people in the world can say that, I'll say. I mean, Michael Hamilton has really put in the work. It shows he has just really changed a little bit of the dynamic of how that Starvo list has been played. He's playing it from an area of patience. Like I said, so many people can just fuse an Okanold and go face, but he chooses not to. Oh, no, he does it different. Like you said, he is built different.
All day, Pheano Black just punishing Starvo players. And that's the narrative coming into this event, right? Like, if there's a weakness for this Starvo list, it's Prism. A lot of people saying this is the moment where Prism actually rises up and takes over the metagame. But Michael Hamilton had a juke. There was something still left to be done. There was a rebuild of this Starvo list. And now you wonder where the metagame goes from here, because we have to take everything we knew about this matchup, throw it out the window. And if this deck, this particular build of Starvo with masterful play, which we saw from Michael Hamilton, and I'm not sure many people in the world can produce, but this deck resets the metagame.
Yep,
it changes everything.
This deck right here, which we will no longer see
thinking.
ever.
Yeah, I want to get one copy of that real quick before we leave.
Oh, yeah, this is as good as gold right now. But, yeah, this list, as we saw at the beginning of this particular round, the finals over here, there's no secret to this. The tools were out there. People had thought that they had solved what Starvo was supposed to look like. And Michael, man, he is just on a different level. So congratulations to Michael Hamilton. Another Calling trophy to add to the mantle. Brian, this has been such a pleasure to just come here and just cast this with you and with Tannen and everybody, the competitors, the decks, the top 8. Frankly, the biggest surprise was no Viserai, but ultimately seeing decks like that Briar, Chain, there were so many exciting matches. I cannot pick my favorite one, but if I had to, I have to say that this finals was so masterfully moved from start to finish, that there was a game plan, there was poise, there was commitment to that game plan from both players, and it was just incredible to watch how that was executed.
Yeah, absolutely deserving champion, and Michael Hamilton. We're going to bring him in the booth for a quick interview, check in with him. I'm sure he's exhausted after this grueling calling, the meticulous play, but I got to get a few words with him. So I'm going to do that. We're going to chat with Michael Hamilton. Flake's going to get out of here. We'll come back in a few and wrap up here from the calling. Welcome back to the booth here from the Calling Indianapolis. I am Brian Gottlieb, and I am joined by the man of the hour, the champion, of course, with this beautiful plaque. Gonna add it to the collection is Michael Hamilton. Number 2 for you. How does it feel, Michael?
It feels really good.
I'm sure it does, and I mean, you changed the game today. Quite frankly, you're establishing yourself as one of the top players in the early days of Flesh and Blood. You know, your last calling win, if you can have unfortunate timing for a calling win, yours was a little unfortunate. It came at the same time as U.S. Nationals we even played. Maybe didn't get as much hype, didn't get as much press as it deserved, but this one, everyone's going to remember this one. You have completely changed how Bravo is built. How did you come to this deck? How did your testing process start, and how did you ultimately arrive here?
Well, it started, I played a very bad version of Control Starvo with like all defense reactions and like not enough elemental cards. And I'm like, this deck sucks. I don't want to play normal Starvo where you have like 17 or something of each element. I don't like, that didn't really appeal to me. And so I went back to Oldheim. I was like, I'm just going to play Oldheim, hope to dodge Prism the whole weekend.
Sure.
And then either Monday or Tuesday, my buddy Ben and me are playtesting, and he shows me this Starvo list that's only a few cards off what I ended up playing today, but I was very impressed. He smashed my Oldheim with it. I'm like, I can't take Oldheim to the calling if I lose to Starvo. So he got me on board, and we worked on the deck together.
Nice. Yeah, this was a weekend. You know, there were other players who started shifting towards this Control Starvo, but you seem to really embrace it. You moved completely away from Awakening, weren't interested in that card anymore. Fuse counts were much lower. Talk to me about those specific decisions. Awakening is the one that's going to be on everyone's mind right now.
Yeah, I really don't like the play pattern of Awakening because, like, when you're winning, it doesn't help you, like, cement your lead. It's just a really bad blue that doesn't block. It doesn't really do much. It doesn't have an element. And you already have a bunch of bad blues in your deck with all, like, the bad blue elements. So Awakening just, like, the spots that it was good, a lot of the time it still wasn't even enough to bring you back into the game. If you were like down by enough to go get a pulverize, then you might just be losing the game even with the pulverize. So I didn't like it before pulverize came out. I think pulverize made the card a lot better, but
Yep.
still not a card I like that much. I'm not even positive that you shouldn't be playing any copies of it. I just personally don't like the card.
Hey, look, it's working for you. You found your lane, you stuck to it, and ultimately took down the championship. Now, Michael, what's next for you in terms of Flesh and Blood? Obviously, Pro Tour New Jersey right around the corner. Are you? I'm assuming you're attending. I'm assuming you're hyped about it.
Yes, I'm very excited to go to New Jersey. For the Pro
And what's
Tour.
your relationship to Flesh and Blood right now? Are you all in? Are you looking to really make a run at putting together a resume in Flesh and Blood? Are you trying to just win everything on the table, heading to every event? Are you going to start heading to foreign callings? What's the plan?
I don't know if I'm gonna cross the seas for some callings, but I'll
Okay.
hit all the ones in the U.S.
Yeah.
All the one. If Canada has one, I'll go there.
No, that sounds great, and I think a lot of people are going to join you in that, especially after this weekend where you showed really what was capable for high-level Flesh and Blood play. You showed the level of strategic depth, an amazing, deserving champion. And, Michael, I know you're exhausted, so I'm not going to keep you here forever, but I promised I would ask one difficult question when you came in, and you're about to get that difficult question. Who's the best Flesh and Blood player in the world right now?
Oh no, I feel on the spot.
Who is it, Michael?
Someone has 2 calling wins.
I agree. I think we're sitting with the best Flesh and Blood player in the world right now. And if you want to take the title, you need to come after this man right here, Michael Hamilton. Congratulations, my friend. Absolutely awesome performance. You should be over the moon. And it was a pleasure to watch you play all weekend.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're going to take one more last break here at the Calling Indianapolis. Let Michael go get some rest. Flake's going to come back in the booth with me, and we're going to wrap things up right here. Do not go anywhere. Great job, man.
All right, did you see how quickly I had to make way for the champ?
You have to show him respect. Get out of the way, Flake.
He came through the curtains over here, and it was just like, I'm out of here. I am not worthy, my friends, and that... It was incredible. And let's just be real here. The questions that you asked, all culminating to that last one, who is the best, flesh and blood player in the world? And the answer was exquisite. Two callings, hello? So
I don't disagree. I mean, especially after the level of play we saw from Michael Hamilton. I was talking about this event with my friend Hayden Dale, and we were setting it up, previewing it, picked a Michael to win the tournament. Reference Michael Hamilton. I'm not giving him full credit for the pick, but ultimately said he had played Michael Hamilton at that calling that he won. He said he felt thoroughly outclassed. Thoroughly. And you see why after watching that play. Just a masterful performance.
And the more that this game grows and the more that it becomes more players are sort of dipping their toe into this game, you see just that the rising tide is raiding all ships here, that all of these other players are essentially figuring out that, hey, this game is good, this game is layered, this game is complex, and if I put the work in, I might be able to go ahead and make one of these tournaments. That right there, that was sitting in this seat, that is the level of excellency that you need to attain. And players like Matt Rogers, who have basically held the crown for so long, beware. And Matt Rogers is completely aware that there is everybody nipping on his heels now. It's not just the Tarek Patels of the world. There's the Michael Hamiltons here that are arguably the top dogs.
I think so. I think he's staked out a very real claim to it. And the thing is, the game's going to continue to evolve. If you want to be part of that evolution, you got to come join us as we do this. We're going to be at Dallas next, SCG Con Dallas. Going to be a Blitz Battle Harden going on that Sunday. Go ahead and entry for $40. Battle all day long. Look to put your name among the champions of Flesh and Blood. And, of course, Flake, you can't forget what's coming up after that. We got Pro Tour #1. That's where we're finally going to crown our first Pro Tour champion. I couldn't be any more excited for this event. Everyone in the world is going to be there. Literally everyone.
I mean, people from other planets might even make some appearances.
I don't want to rule it out. I really don't.
I'm not here to just say that I'm not a believer, but ultimately, Pro Tour New Jersey, James White has said that if you're going to go attend one event, that is the big one. Absolutely 100% Pro Tour New Jersey is going to be a big coming out party for the game, a coming out party for a game that's already basically come out. It's out there, and people are really consuming it and enjoying it and playing it at exceptionally high levels.
No, I couldn't agree more. And if you're anxious to get your feet wet, I couldn't recommend it more. It's such a good community. I had such a blast this weekend.
Yes.
The excitement around this event is like excitement I haven't felt in a very long time. Just people piled on the rails watching the finals, people cheering their friends on. So many storylines evolving throughout the weekend. Flake, if you had to choose a high point, can you think of any one moment? I mean, there's so many. I know that's an unfair question. There's got to be something that stands out.
I could just go ahead and be like, the viewers. No, I can't. But honestly,
you already used that cop-out once. You get that once per show. That's
all right.
it.
Okay. So in all honesty, I mean, if I were to pick one match, I think with some of those chain matches, but ultimately the finals was really a nail biter, and just it was a masterclass of how to play the game at different paces. And I think that's very important to see, is how the best in the world play it and can play it so flawlessly. But ultimately, man, I will be completely honest with you. I know that, Craig, I do wish you well, and I hope that the recovery is coming soon. And I know that my opportunity here was one of sort of, not ideal circumstances, but I had an absolute blast working with you, Brian. This is the first time that I get to sort of sit across from a pro like yourself. And Tan and Grace, second place again. You
were both incredible to work with, and I clearly miss my dear friend Craig. I hope we get our chance to do this together in the future. But absolutely amazing job as a fill-in out of nowhere. No preparation, no knowledge. You're going to be thrown absolutely to the lions like that, and you delivered entirely. I was, and this is no joke, midway through my route from Toronto on the way driving to Indianapolis to play in the calling when I got a call saying, what clothes did you pack? And that's when we basically shifted gears, and here I am. So it's, again, a joy and a pleasure, and honestly, all of the spotlight has to go to the players who made this event absolutely exquisite. This is one to remember. I don't recall being able to cast this many matches that went down to the wire and were so suspenseful that I was gripped into this. It did not feel like an hour had passed through some of these matches. I agree entirely. All right, Flake, that's going to do it for me. I don't have anything else to say. I'm losing my voice. I'm tired. I'm sleepy. Send the people home for us. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for joining us here at the Calling in Indianapolis from SCG, and everyone, the viewers, and all the judges here in Indianapolis. Thank you so much. Be kind to one another. We'll catch you next time at the next Battle Harden. See you soon.